anglais, du coup aussi, et
okay.
passer direct. Kelly, please let me know when you see us live, if you don't mind. Okay, we're live now. Welcome everyone. Welcome to this last segment of the TBS Global Week. Very, very happy to be here this afternoon. Maybe the morning if you're connecting from the US, the evening if you're connecting from Asia. You might think that I'm sounding pretentious, but I know for a fact that Arno is coming from Singapore in a bit, and that we'll have Rachel and Leah from the US. So see, this is an actual truth. So again, very happy to have you this afternoon for the last stretch of the Global Week. For those who just joined us for the first time, welcome on board. Very happy to have you as well. We're going to have an amazing agenda this afternoon. We'll start with Sylvain. Sylvain, you can already join us if you want. You're very welcome to join us. So Sylvain Bourjade is director of the Center of Excellence in aeronautics, and he's a director as well, a scientific director at the Research Institute for the Future of the Aviation, something that's going to be launched in the coming weeks. So a bit of an exclusivity, although it's been in the news already, but it's there. You've seen his head pointing, but it is going to be right back. And after that, we're going to have Arno and Leonard. So Arno is an ex-Airbus, just left Airbus literally after 20 years in the industry and the last 13, if I'm not mistaken, with Airbus, working in strategy. And we'll have as a sparring partner, Leonard Favre, who's going to be talking about airline restructuration. Again, has been doing a lot of work in the field. Next, we're gonna have Lionel Roch from Tarmac Aerospace talking about upcycling and recycling of planes. That's what happens to the train that goes to the trash. Following that, another one that really keen on talking about those topics, Yann Lemoel, founder of Living Labs and partner at Pufferfish Partners, who's gonna moderate a panel with Vincent Ducamin and Cecilia Sproder, from respectively from Aura, Aero, and Navblue, an Airbus company, and they're gonna talk about reinventing the aero industry and whether it's a corporate or startup job, and probably both. Following that, Mathieu Larocque, who's going to talk about how he rediscovered Earth while exploring space. So Mathieu has been working in Thales Alenia Space for the last 15 years, I believe, and is a big expert in the field, and now is focusing much of his efforts on Earth. And last but not least, to finish, a female panel exclusively with Leah Guiteni and Rachel Abercrombie, both joining us from the US. So, Leah is at Amazon and she's based in Seattle. Rachel is at AccuBed. It's another Airbus company. So it's actually the innovation hub at Airbus. And they're both going to talk to us about the future of mobility, which they're both helping to design. So without further ado, welcoming Sylvain to this panel. Before we get started into our topics of the day, I'd like to remind you of a couple of things. First, this event would never be happening without TBS alumni. We have a community of alumni of 45,000 people. I heard this week an alumni telling me, like, yeah, it used to be a group of friends just like hanging out with each other. That's something that's pretty hard to do when you're 45,000 people all around the world. And so to organize that, we have a great team of TBS alumni. So Cathy, Raquel, Mathilde, and Penny, who've been organizing the community and keeping our alumni engaged and organizing a lot of initiatives. So if you want to know more about that, do please get in touch. And they've been funding this event and helping a lot on the foundation as well, which leads to the second part of my announcement, which is this event is for the benefit of the foundation. So TBS alumni has made this event free for everyone, and for one of the reasons as well is so that people can contribute to the foundation. So join, attend those conferences, and if you like what you're seeing, if you learn anything, if you made any good connection, pay it forward, paid forward by making a donation to the TBS Foundation. The TBS Foundation helps students in needs with grants. We had the testimonial of a couple of them earlier today, and helps also the TB Seeds, an internal incubator that helps startups willing to funded by entrepreneurs from TBS, and so helping them to kickstart their initiative, and especially initiative helping turn the world in a better place. So do contribute. To do that, it's very easy. You have the URL right there, tbsglobalweek.com. You go on the foundation page. It's going to take you 20 seconds. You can give €5, you can give 20, you can give 2,000, depending on what you can. Do it. It's going to make a lot of difference in someone's life. And so they're going to have access to the same kind of inspiration as you did. And so eventually they're going to have a life as amazing as you do, right? Sylvain, can you plug your camera? Can you hear me? Are you there?
Yeah. So
okay. We can see you. Yeah. All right. So now we see you. So Sylvain, thank you for joining, and it's been quite a short notice, and you've helped us as well, actually, because thanks to you, we had Rachel and Cecilia joining this program. So thank you a lot again. That's one of the amazing parts of the alumni community and the TBS community, where connecting with each other, we managed to get access to amazing people. And as I was saying, like you're working with the Center of Excellence at Toulouse, and working on the Aero industry. And we invited you so that we can learn a little bit more about what you've been working on, what kind of research TBS is doing, and really what do you see being the trends and the challenges that the industry is facing. So if you could tell us more about that, that'd be amazing.
Okay, so thank you very much first for inviting me to introduce this terrific afternoon with many alumni that are, of course, much better than me to explain these things. But, let me talk a little bit about what we are doing at TBS, and in particular in the Center of Excellence in Aeronautics and Space. As some of you know, oh, sorry. That's fine. You can. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm not from the aeronautics sector at the beginning. I'm a finance guy. Okay. I was some years ago discussing with one of our alumni, Regis Huck, who was working at the time at McKinsey Consulting, making the IATA report for airline performance. And we were discussing about a terrific topic in the aeronautics industry. This is the topic of leasing. But what do you think about leasing? And to be honest, let's say 5 years ago, I was not aware about the importance of leasing in the aeronautic industry, and I starting to discuss about that. And now when, for instance, Boeing or Airbus sell an aircraft, sell 2 aircraft, one of them is sold to a lessor. And the question is, what is the impact of leasing on the airline performance? And we try to discuss that with Regis, who knows a lot about the airline industry. And at McKinsey, they did not find any relationship between leasing and performance. And we started to collect data about that. And finally, using the tool that we know in academics, so basically mathematics, statistics, econometrics, try to link in terms of the causality of the impact of leasing on performance. And what we find is that, in fact, leasing has the main impact on airline performance, and that the optimal level of leasing is much more than half of the total, should be more than 1/2 of the total fleet of in the worldwide, at least. And I started to be interested in this particular industry, aeronautic industry, first from the finance point of view, but now I'm trying to do many other things. So, for instance, I'm trying to analyze with one of my colleagues, also from the Center of Excellence at TBS, the impact of government holdings on airline performance, and something that is also quite interesting. And so we are trying to work with the World Bank for that. So we show that, so because many people think that government make firms less efficient. And what we show is that, in fact, in the airline industry, this is not the case. And we show that basically, if we have some percentage of government holdings as shareholder of airlines, this may help airlines to be much more cost efficient. And, for the moment, we find that, we are not very precise because, this is a preliminary draft of our research, but, we show that between 20 and 30% of government holdings may be much better for airlines. So we try to analyze, in fact, what are the characteristics of airlines that make them more perform better. And so now I'm making some research in this specific industry. I have met some, many of our alumni that work, of course, in the aeronautic industry. So we will have this afternoon Rachel, who was one of my finance students in master. We will also have Cecilia, who was an alumni from the MBA in aerospace. She comes from law, but now she works in innovation and in business development of the airline industry in a very, very interesting firm, NavBlue. And so basically, we have many people at Airbus, at Boeing, or even in many other firms from the aeronautics, but also not only in the aeronautics, in mobility in general, in urban mobility, so in space also. So what we are trying to do is to bring the up-to-date research that academics do to practitioners, and maybe to mix their particular knowledge, okay, that we will not be able to achieve at academics, but then to take the data that they have, their knowledge, and then to try to use all this knowledge to build models, academic models that will help in the industry to perform better, but not only. And this is also the thing that you were talking about, Julien, with many engineering schools. So the ENAC, the pilot school at Toulouse, Super Aero, which is one of the best engineering school in the aeronautic industry. And I think that Thomas Pesquet has made Super Aero before. We also work with the weather forecast school, so l'École de la Météo in Toulouse, and the Toulouse School of Economics. And we will also allow lawyers from and sociologists from the different universities at Toulouse to try to make interdisciplinary research in aeronautics to build the future of aviation. So basically, we will announce in the next weeks, so I think in the 2 next weeks, the creation of the Institute of Sustainable Aviation that will, that the objective is to become the first research institute in aeronautics that takes into account sustainability. Okay, so we will try to work on many very interesting topics, in particular, of course, how to resort to sustainable aviation fuels. Okay, so you all know biofuels. Of course, they combine hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and cost of electricity. Okay, the same fuels, for instance. And
sorry to interrupt you.
Really think that this is a very interesting decarbonization. Sorry. Decarbonization route that will allow us to distort what happened in the kerosene. So basically, we try to analyze how the capacity of sustainable aviation fuel will allow to address the challenge of upscaling to these new things. We'll also try to. Oh, sorry. Maybe so you cannot hear me. You could.
Yeah, we could hear you. Yeah, we could hear you.
Okay.
We heard it.
Okay, sorry. So I was talking about sustainable aviation fuels, and in this Institute for Sustainable Aviation, we try to define how to organize a supply chain of this biofuel, this sustainable aviation fuel that will help us to make the transition with kerosene. We will try also to make exactly the same, how to help the aviation industry to make the transition to hydrogen. And so we got some funding from the European Commission to help us to understand how to organize these supply chains. So of course, biofuel industry, but also the hydrogen industry to allow the airline industry to make the transition. We'll also try to analyze how we could make the transition to urban air mobility. So I think that you will have the opportunity to talk late in the afternoon with Rachel, who was part of the Airbus project for flying taxi, and you know, I think that that's also a quite interesting thing. So do we really think that we will have a real urban air mobility in the next years? So basically the idea is so we all have to that due to the COVID-19 crisis, but you know, of course, as researchers, we had this in mind much before. We need to rebuild this industry, okay? And I think that we can help practitioners to model, to organize both the supply chain, but also the industry to make the transition to a much green world. And I think, but you know, not only in terms of, so I think that's quite important for me to say that, not to avoid them to make business, but you know, to allow them to make still business, but in a more sustainable world. And I think that this is the objective of the Institute for Sustainable Aviation, and the objective of TBS, try to join sustainability, big data and artificial intelligence, and the airline industry to allow this industry to become much cleaner, but also much more performant. And you know, to allow consumers to continue to travel and to see what they want, but in a more sustainable way.
Well, thanks for this intro, Sylvain, and a lot of project going on. One thing that we've asked to your colleague at TBS is how can alumni and especially alumni working in the mobility and aero industry can collaborate with TBS. There's a bunch of projects where you guys are looking for partners. You talked about Rachel and Cecilia you've been working with. What are the ways to collaborate, and what could alumni and companies expect from this collaboration, maybe?
So, as you know, I'm a finance guy. So the first thing I will ask is money. Okay, of course, in order to make research, we need money. We need to be funded for that. But this is not only the only thing. So what we need is your knowledge, because you all have a much better knowledge than us about the important thing that we need to change in this industry. So of course, discussing with you will be a first step. Then allowing us to have access to data. You know that now the main thing that we need in research is use data to show that we have effects of something. So for instance, you know, I don't know if you have seen, but the last Nobel Prize in economics was allocated to three guys, David Cart, Angrist, and Imballs. So they, you know, what they have made, you know, they have collected data about very practical things, and they have shown that we are able to show that in the world, okay, we do not just have correlation between things, because you know we can find correlation between almost everything. You all have here the sentence, we can make numbers say what we want, but you know, in fact, this is not the case. We can make numbers say what we want if we misuse them. But if we use them very correctly, with very good academic models, econometrics models, statistic models, of course, we have to show that we have some things that are the causes, some things that are the consequences. And this is what we call in academics causality. Okay, and what we want to make with the Center of Excellence in this institute is to show that if we change some things, the cause, we may have different things, the consequences. But in order to show that what we say will be really the case in practice, we need data. Okay, and you know what? If you have access to very interesting data about, you know, the hydrogen industry. So in particular, if you work in Japan, in Germany, or in California, in which the market for hydrogen is much developed, much better developed, you know, of course, you are more than welcome to share this data or to co-work with them. So basically, we can make collaborations. If you can provide data, this may help us, of course. And as Julien talked to you, of course, with the TBS Foundation, you can fund very interesting things. So help our students who are, who need some money to pay their fees and their studies. But we also need you, if you are interested in these topics, to fund our research and to make collaborative projects with industry. Okay, so data and discussion, data.
Sylvain, you're a finance guy, but I'm a business guy, and so you're asking for money, you're asking for data, but in my field, it's what's in it for the companies that give you all that. And there's one thing that I can already say is by funding the foundation, they can actually get fiscal incentive to get more for less.
Yeah.
But what exactly do they get in return when they work with you and they give you data and money?
Okay, so the idea is, we have two ways of funding research. The first way is with the foundation. Okay, so with the foundation, of course, you will get credit taxes, but the thing is that we are not consultants. So of course we can make some consulting jobs as academics also, but this is not what I was talking about. What I mean is, of course, if you come with some interesting topics, imagine that you are a practitioner and you are really willing to understand, how much should I invest in sustainable fuels, or or how much it will cost me to satisfy the future regulation if I'm not in the hydrogen industry. So basically, you arrive with some questions that are of interest for you. But you also arrive with data, and then as academics, we have the necessary time to analyze this question and to provide interesting results. So for instance, we are able to, we were working with one of my colleagues was working on a project that is quite interesting, is to analyze if introducing a new TGV line between two French towns was interesting compared to what really happened, taking into account the competition of airlines, but also competition of buses or BlaBlaCar, for instance. And basically, this firm was really thinking about, how should we price our tickets to take into account all this competition if we introduce a new TGV line. And of course, our colleagues have answered, and and the interest is win-win, because you may have a solution for your question, and we will arrive with a publication in an academic journal. So basically, when you will talk to your investors or your boss or whatever, you will arrive with a solution that has been published in an academic journal. So basically, it is not biased in your favor. It is a real academic publication. So basically, if you have a regulator or if you have a discussion with investors, you cannot say, okay, this is my consultant that has made this job, okay, because they know that maybe that consulting firms may make the job for you, so we'll insert in your favor. So as academics, we have we can be seen as much more neutral. And if it is an academic publication, it is, of course, the case, because academic publication cannot be biased. Okay, so we arrive with solution.
And what if you don't like the results? Can you prevent them from being published?
Okay, so of course, if you don't like if you don't like the results, So of course we can discuss about that, but the fact that you have to understand that as we make statistical studies, we will not arrive with a yes or a no. We arrive with a solution that if you do that, and that, if your firm has these characteristics, that will be the result. So basically, our contribution, which much more. So what should you change to make your result better, or your performance in terms of carbon emission, or in terms of use of biofuels, or in terms of use of hydrogen, or in terms of financial performance or economic performance. So basically, we are not saying, okay, this is good or this is bad. We are saying, okay, maybe this is good, maybe this is bad, but the idea is, what should you change, or what should you make in order to make your performance better in terms of finance or carbon emission or whatever.
Get it. Super interesting. So thank you, Sylvain. So a lot of research being made, and especially some research on the sustainability front, and how to make an industry that's been called out for its negative impact, and so reinventing this industry in the right way, thanks to research and thanks to academics, and also an opportunity to collaborate with
just some words. Also think that the carbon emission from the airline industry are only 2% of the global emission. So, people really think that the airline industry is not very clean, not very green, but, still, of course, we can make very, very important change. But if we really want to have a change that has an impact on climate change, the airline industry will not be enough to change everything. So we need to make a lot of things in many other industries.
Yeah. Another way to look at it is that if you travel the world once in the year, as opposed to someone who doesn't, you already have like more negative impact on the world. So,
still, of course, personally,
So still something to look into, and also to mention, and we'll see that with some of our speakers, that some of the project that we're working on mobility and Aero, and so Leah and Rachel in particular will talk about that as well, but will have an impact on other industries as well, or Vincent, for instance, who's working on that and can also help the other mobility industry and maybe replace the trucks and stuff like that. So of course, everything is interconnected, and so working with the likes of you to do those research is essential, so that we can all work together in making something holistic and not work in silos. So thanks a lot. Do get in touch, reach out to TBS.
Okay. Of course,
try and see what you can do with researchers. And thanks, Sylvain, again for joining. I know you're in the middle of the mountain, joining from a personal place. So thanks for taking the time on Sunday. And all the best for your research, and we'll be in touch, obviously. Thank you so much.
Okay, so please do not hesitate to contact me just to discuss before, and then we'll see what we can do together. And of course, I thank all the alumni to be part of this very interesting event, the Global Week, and of course, Julien for organizing this terrific program. So thank you very much, all of you. Bye.
Thank you, Sylvain. Bye-bye. Have a good Sunday. Bye. And so we're welcoming Arnaud and Léonard, and they're connecting right now. Can we see you guys? All right. I can see Arnaud and I can see Léonard. Just gonna put Léonard's full name so that people know who you are. All right. Hello, Léonard. Hello, Arnaud. Very, very welcome here. Special thanks for Arnaud for the effort, because he's joining from Singapore and it's already nighttime there. His day is finishing. It's 8:30 there, so not yet time to sleep. And we know you can't really party in Singapore, so probably don't have much better to do on a Sunday night anyway. But still, very, very much thank you. It's just a joke. And Léonard as well. Thank you both for joining. So I'm very happy to have you guys, because having two super experts like you on this industry is quite exceptional to open a session on mobility and Aero. Arnaud, I just realized, Arnaud, preparing the session, that you actually graduated the same year that I did. So we might actually have met at school, although we didn't know each other. And also because you were in an executive MBA, and I was just a fresh grad from the regular business school. And so, as I said, Arnaud is joining from Singapore, and we've met there. I'm leading the chapter there, and I was lucky to meet him in person a few times before the lockdown happened and never ever ended in Singapore. But everything is changing, right? Because you're soon moving to Europe. You've just left Airbus, so you'll tell us more about that and what's coming up, hopefully. And we also have Leonard, who's actually the only student we invited to speak during the Global Week, and I'm saying that in a jokey way, obviously, because he's actually doing a doctorate and teaching at TBS. He's also got a great pedigree he's going to talk about, and so that's why we thought that was okay to do an exception and have a student on board, given his level of seniority. I think we are lucky, right? So you guys, can you maybe introduce yourselves to our audience who doesn't know you and who's probably already fed up with my jokes and want to know more about you guys?
Should I start? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Arnaud.
Hey, Julien. Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with all the former colleagues or students, alumni. So thanks to Julien, thanks to the TBS Foundation. It's 8:30 here in Singapore, so it's okay. I'm not sleeping yet. I'm a bit older than you, but it's okay. I can manage. From 8:30 p.m., I can still manage. Very quick summary of what I've done in the last 25 years. So all in Airbus, even though it was named Aerospace Valley, EADS, Eurocopter. Every 2 years we change name. Airbus Group, then Airbus. I think we're going to stay with Airbus because it's a nice name. I've been working in the 3 or 4, then 3 divisions of the group: commercial aircraft, helicopters, defense, space. It's very interesting, actually, even though it looks like it's the same group, actually moving from one entity to another. It's like, it was like a different experience, because at that time, the group was not as integrated as it is today. So 10 or 15 years ago, moving from, for example, Marignan, Abu Dhabi, or Singapore, or Toulouse, or Munich was quite moving to a different company. And to cut a long story short, I've been 12 years in Asia Pacific for EADS, Airbus Group, and now Airbus. And I left Airbus last week, actually. So this is where we are.
Wow. Leonard, do you want to take over? Such a teasing introduction.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and also thank you, Laurent Besson, who is the director of the GEMBA, the Global Executive MBA at TBS, as you know, who think it was a good idea to invite us a sort of student with around also 25 experience in the airline and the consulting business. Also to make it short, basically I had the privilege by coincidence. I think in the career, a lot of things are based on coincidence. I have been lucky when I was younger. I was around 30. I was lucky to enter the defense sector. I was for 4 years a CFO of the Swiss Ministry of Defense. And another, bad luck in this time, back in 2001, the 1st of October 2001, when the national airline Swissair made bankruptcy. And at that time, I was one of the personal advisors of the Swiss Minister of Economy. And it's also when I really start to dive into airline bankruptcy, restructuring, turnaround, etc. And from there, I decided to build my career. In parallel, I'm lucky to be graduate from INSEAD, Fontainebleau. I didn't do TBS at that time, and also for Arnaud, I was the second promotion to from INSEAD to have a mix between the Fontainebleau campus and Singapore. Means I spent some time in Singapore too, and from there I shift from the public sector to the private sector, and I entered the management consulting world. I was working for Booz Allen Hamilton, then AlixPartners. AlixPartners is well known in the special situation of transformation turnaround, and obviously the airline industry was my main area of competency. And for the last also 18 years, I spent almost my entire time and customer in the Middle East region. I mean, from Bahrain from Abu Dhabi, basically to the world, as we used to say. But I keep keeping my airline tags. I am over 180 times the flight either Abu Dhabi or Dubai, Zurich. That means I'm from there. Also a frequent flyer. Yeah. To make it short, maybe we'll have an opportunity to speak about detail later on.
Thanks, Leonard, and I love the background with all the planes and all that. And by the way, your screen is vibrating. We feel like you're on a plane yourself, or maybe on a helicopter.
Okay, because maybe my
there's some bumps, but careful. We might have a few people jumping from the plane. Leonard, your profile says confidential in lieu of an employer, so that's kind of intriguing. Why would a company not want you to communicate on your contributions to their activity?
As you start the introduction with a joke, I will do something similar, Julien. If you have a cancer, which obviously I don't, I will not wish for you. Do you want people to know about it? This is a bit the situation from some industry or airlines in the airline industry, especially in the Gulf, where state airlines are also a matter of pride. They are not willing to publish or to mention, at least at the early stage. Now I can openly say, for example, for 7 months from last July until early this year, we were working on turning around the Royal Jordanian out of Amman. But those customers, they are not so keen to make public announcement, because for people working in the marketing, you might think it might affect the brand or the trust of passenger flying, because they say, oh, they are in a difficult situation, means they will save on maintenance, or I don't know where. I mean, in the really difficult situation of turnaround, we are here not talking about performance improvement, because I think we exchange with Arno, Felix partner. We are also working on performance improvement. We were having a lot of assignment for Airbus in Toulouse, for example. This is something different. But when you go turn around when time matters, that means close or next door to bankruptcy, this is or it might be very, very tricky for customers, especially those who are not obliged to make it public for shareholder. They want to keep a bit secret.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. So that gives us a perfect transition to the topic of our session, actually, right? So for the last year and a half or so, something which I think was absolutely unpredictable happened to the airlines and the plane makers. And so the industry was thriving, experiencing one of its best years in history, if not the best one, growing like crazy on all fronts. And it was, and the pun that follows is intended, was hit by a train, we put it, and it was put to a stop, right? So we've seen something that actually never happened, right? Like no flights in the air, like maybe the cargo industry continued, but at the very beginning it was kind of like everything stopped. Can you tell us how it was experienced from your respective sectors, which are obviously interconnected, and how it looked like from the inside, right? And so maybe we'll start with Leo, because I probably started with the one facing the customers, the airline industry. Maybe we can look into what does it mean when you're selling the planes themselves, right?
Yeah, you might imagine the situation was dramatic, because first of all, when the pandemic and all the lockdown started, obviously you have some aircraft still flying. That means you have to organize to have all aircraft on the ground. It's something will never happen, because it's known in the airline industry, an aircraft it's much expensive on the ground than flying. That means suddenly the airline has to find a way to get all aircraft on the ground, on the floor, and also to find a park, because even on a national airline with an international airport, you are not alone, and that means this aspect initially was very, very complicated to manage. At the same time, you don't have any more revenue. You don't have revenue, but at the same time, you have still your employers. For most of the airline, because it has been a trend in the industry, I would say half of the airliner fleet is based on leasing. That means you still have to continue to pay the rent, etc. That means clearly they were not prepared to something at such level of catastrophic level, I would say. And definitely they were asking everywhere for advisor, for consultant like us. At the same time, we were humble to say, okay, we will work for you to find a solution, but we are not magicians. I mean, we have to find something to cope with. And you mentioned the cargo. Clearly, the cargo business was something who emerged from the pandemic, not only because it was an issue to for the supply chain, but at the same time for airline, it was an opportunity at least to generate some cash, because obviously they start to be also creative, innovative. Some airline immediately they decided to remove seats from aircraft, what is not so easy, because in the airline industry we are not like your car, you can do whatever you want, you need STC, etc. But some airlines they decide to remove seat to have more capacity on flight, and at least not to cover the cost, but to find a solution to mitigate the delay, because at that time nobody expected that it will last for so long. But for at an initial stage, it was clearly a requirement to be a bit innovative, to think out of the box.
Oh, yeah, and I like what you say. Like they called you for magic, but unfortunately you don't really have a clue of what's going to happen, right? So Arnaud, going back to you, I'm guessing assuming it was a ripple effect, right? So when the industry goes well, you start ordering more planes to increase your capacity and anticipate the growing demand. All of a sudden, I'm imagining that kind of change when you're so your job was the VP of strategy, right? So and so without, I imagine, revealing the internal secret sauce, you can't really do that. How do you strategize when you have no idea what's going to happen next week, and when the whole thing is shifting upside down and just like going on its head? Like, so what did it look like on the other side of the industry?
Well, Julien, you said it. I'm trying to remember how we were 18 months ago, and Leonard explained very, very well what happened. Just a few figures. In a few weeks, we had 2/3 of the global fleet grounded. We had about 21,000 aircraft flying. In a matter of weeks, 3-4 weeks, 2 months maximum, you had 14,000 aircraft grounded. Okay. So we used to have crisis, right? We had economic crisis in 2008. We had security crisis, 9/11, 2001. We had sanitary crisis before with the SARS. Asia is very used to sanitary crisis with the SARS since 2003. But they were local and they were not permanent, right? They were temporary. If you take the growth of the aircraft market of beyond 100 packs, and Boeing and Airbus are having the same analysis, it's growing average of about 3 to 5, rather 4+% per year in average. And you had small accidents, 2001, 2003, 2008. If you look at the curve, if you zoom out, the curve is perfect. In a world which is a duopoly, the duopoly is perfect. It's better than a monopoly, right? And you can even see that in other markets. I'm talking about commercial aircraft. If we speak about defense and helicopters, it's much more competitive. But the largest market in our industry, which is commercial aircraft, it's a duopoly, roughly 50-50, 60-40, even 65-35 for single aisle, but roughly it's stable. And there are some accidents when it runs. What happened here, and then in a few weeks, we realized that, it's going to be something else. How long does it going to take? What is the magnitude of it? We didn't know. You remember, Julien, we were together in February 2020 in Singapore. We are all saying, okay, I hope the summer 2020 will be okay. Summer last year, we had no idea it would take 2 years, okay? But during this period, the problem is not to sell. The problem is not the orders. You spoke about no more orders, no more command. That's not the issue. The order book is still here. The order intakes are still here, okay? The problem was survival, because you have your cost, your cash outs, which are made of labor suppliers, mainly, which are still here, a couple of billion of dollars every month for the industry at large. And all of a sudden, no more cash in, okay? Not a single airline in the world has not requested either to stop the payment, to cancel deliveries, cancel aircraft, or restructure the contract. So all of a sudden, you are taken in a squeeze where you have your cost, operating cost, and no more revenues. So it really was a matter of survival. So you're not in the strategy, you're not in the PowerPoint. You don't think the world of tomorrow. You think, how am I going to survive today, right? And we can exchange a bit later of what the management of Airbus and Boeing actually and all these companies have done. But this is the magnitude where we were. We heard sometimes the biggest crisis since the war, World War II. I don't agree with that. This is the biggest crisis ever. During the wars, unfortunately, it was good for the aerospace and defense industry, right? We are producing a lot of aircraft. So this is the worst crisis ever. This is unprecedented. It never happened.
That sounds incredible, right? Because you're talking about like billion-dollar company. There's two of them, feel like they're untouchable, like they're not really crash, right? And then all of a sudden you say like, in a snap of a finger that they had to think about their survival, and all of a sudden it could stop. So that I think it's a very interesting message for all companies out there. Maybe I'm preaching my own field now, but for the innovation and anticipating whatever can happen and being creative in times where it goes well, because as it's just proven, right? Like something can happen that you can predict and get. So Leonard, like moving back to you on that. So you're touching on that. You were talking like about companies calling you like for help, or maybe calling for Gandalf and his armada of magic sortilege. But so when they call the Pixar and when they call you for help, obviously you probably still go and try and thinking along with them. So how did it look like concretely? And I don't know if you can actually name companies you work with or not, because it's too fresh, or maybe it's still ongoing. But what did it look like from the inside, and how do you actually approach that kind of situation when, as Arnaud just said, like no clue what's going to happen? You think it's going to be a few weeks, maybe not, and you have to make them survive or rethink about the company so that you can live until tomorrow and then think about the future again.
The first part of my answer, I will mention we also observe a shift in the consulting business, because clearly when airline face and not only airline, by the way, in general in the industry, face such situations, they are not using the usual consultant doing a nice PowerPoint chart, etc. Unfortunately, quite frequently with junior people and just the senior are good at selling. But we observe a shift. They were really looking for people very operational, very hands-on. That means they are looking for people with experience. That means because clearly it's not you directly enter the company already close to bankruptcy. That means obviously if you don't generate revenue, as Arnaud mentioned, the bills are still around. That means we were very focused on the financial aspect. Most, at least the customer we are in are all, most of them are legacy carrier, and most of the legacy carrier are backed by the government. That means they were looking for a quick transformation plan to make sure that they will get state aid. Why they were looking for state aid? It's obvious because the states are willing or are here also to help company, the employers mainly, but not to pay the fuel, but obviously for ensure the salary of the people, and at the same time, even though you have the crisis, when some countries started again to open some border, we observe clearly that one of the business model was more resilient. and it's clearly the low-cost carrier model. If you look worldwide, the airline model who survive quite well in the industry are the low cost. The low cost because mainly they are serving within the continent. That means in the US, if you look now, the figure of low cost carrier in the US are already over pre-pandemic. You look in Europe, the Ryanair, Wizz Air, EasyJet, they are pretty in a good shape. That means those airlines, they are very cautious and they are very aggressive. As soon as I looked at some airlines are looking for state aid, they are basically make opposition. That means those airlines backed by government, they were also looking to have a recovery plan who they can justify. They can justify. That means it was a big part of the job to find acceptable, I would say, opportunity for them to survive. At the same time, surviving means to be flexible because, as we know also, it was some months better than other because the pandemic was and the lockdown in different continent were different. But definitely all airlines they suffer big time. For one of the major issue, independent of the airline industry, it was the lack of coordination between the various countries. I mean, with lockdown, duration, etc., and it affected a lot. Still now, even though now it's getting better, even though we start again to think or to talk about a variant, the Delta plus, etc. But the lack of coordination between states strongly affect the airline industry.
And just one thing on that, Leonard, there's a question from Mutu Kumaran, who's asking whether in those cases, airlines, do they prefer working with the big names of the management consulting, or like they prefer individual consultant that they know and they can trust already? Yeah,
this is a very, very interesting question, and it's not only related to the pandemic. Here I'm speaking about my experience, and I still remember when long time ago when I was working still working for Boozel and Hamilton in Abu Dhabi, we had many assignments with Mubadala. Mubadala is a big investment company owned by the Abu Dhabi government, and we were involved also with Airbus to establish Strata, who is part of the OEM program to build aircraft, etc. And we were working very closely, and then. Going back to a small boutique, I would say, calling One Blue Horizon, I'm having the same contact, the same excellent contact with the managing director, and is hesitating because it's sort of like an insurance, even though this is the same people, but they unfortunately most of the time they prefer to have big name because the customer are looking big name as everything in the back and also the brand, etc., etc. Is the reason why for back to the pandemic situation, it was an opportunity for the small boutique with senior expert, even though I don't like much the term expert, but people like us working on interim management for the big name. That means the big names, as I mentioned, they were used to use junior people, etc. And the customer were looking for people with credential, with experience. And it was an opportunity people like myself and others to work on behalf of big name. It's a way around, but definitely the airlines they still like big name, McKinsey.
Airlines like big names, you like the big experts. That's interesting. Airlines like the big names, and the big names like the big experts. And so at the end of the day, it's kind of like goes back to you guys, but the intermediary.
There is a shift. They are looking for senior people, not anymore for junior.
Yeah. Is that similar at a company like Airbus, Arno? Would a company like Airbus go for the big names and the kind of like big logos in the industry when they're looking for consultants?
Airbus as a customer or as a supplier, you mean?
No, so when I'm guessing Airbus uses a lot of consultants as well. And when the crap hit the fan, do they go for like big names of consulting, of management consulting, or they would go for like small boutiques and specific experts?
Oh, definitely big firms. And I would say that this is one of the first thing that has been cut. You know, when we spoke about a matter of survival and save cash in the company, the things you do is that you cut all the temps, all the consulting firms, all which is not a short-term essential. So Bernard probably knows that, and all the ecosystem around Airbus in Toulouse or around Seattle in Boeing learned it the hard way, especially the one who are 100% working, who has only one customer, which is the aerospace industry. They learned it the hard way that if it is not short-term essential for the survival of the company, it was cut. Okay, but to come back to your question, yes, big companies work with big companies, or in other words, the big companies doesn't know how to work with small companies, except if there are some niche technologies, or of course niche suppliers or niche business somewhere. Otherwise, and vice versa. For a small company, it's extremely difficult to work with big corporations, but it's true in every sector of activity, not only aerospace. We know that, we see that everywhere.
And there's a bit of, excuse my French, but a bit of a cover your ass effect as well, where
absolutely
help with a name that and it fails, it's not your fault.
Exactly. Take a law firm. Take a law firm, for example. You can work with an excellent lawyer in a country. Singapore, for example, or Australia, you know, is the best one, but it's not a big name. So you need to work with the big law firms because you cover yourself. Yes. So the big fish are working with the big fish. Yes.
Cool. So not encouraging, but still the way the work works. So it's going to change. But that leads to the next question. So in my field, like, and so I work a lot with innovation, and I'm among the small firms, obviously, but we do consider chaos as a source of opportunities, right? Like even the Global Week itself was launched on these premises, where middle of lockdown, we said like, all right, we're going to launch the Global Week, Darwinistic concept where species who survive are the one who adapt. No, right? So we cannot do a global gathering, we cannot meet in Paris anymore. Let's do a huge digital party and get people from all over the world. And that's what happened. Then we had the opportunities of two guys who would unlikely meet at a panel, or Arnaud, you would probably have not fly to Toulouse for such an event, even though you want it, but it's a lot of commitment just to make that happen. So who do you think are the winners of this pandemic in your respective industries, and what are the kind of like opportunities that came up in those kind of industries? Maybe Arnaud, you want to start this one?
That's a very good question. Usually it's one we say when the question is difficult to say. That's a very good question. It's a very wide question. If you speak about OEMs, definitely Airbus is getting out of the crisis and will get out of the crisis stronger towards its competitors. Is it due to the crisis, or is it due to everything that happened over the last 5 years? We'll know. We don't know yet. And how long it will last, we don't know. But the fact that the market, at least in the next 2-3 years, is clearly driven by single aisle, which are the A320 family, to simplify. And by chance, Airbus is the clear market leader in this market. You see the wide body deliveries and sales are very low. Wide bodies are the equivalent of the 350 or 78 or 777. Not talking about the issues with some program issues, but really the market is run by single aisle. So the clear winner today is Airbus. How long it will last, I don't know. Boeing is not the one who stays idle for long. So we can suspect they are going to come back and come back very strong. The industry at large is the one who will survive. That's the same for the airlines, are going to be war machines. They are going to be extremely strong because they got leaner, they got faster, they learn new ways of working. In 2 years, you see the speed. We probably gained 10 years in 2 years in terms of digitalization, getting green, new ways of working. We speak about hybrid working, for example, doing 2 or 3 days per week at home and the HR now realize that we are everybody is beginning to do that. It could have taken 10 years or 15 years to change the mentality. So the survivors will be stronger. There are some who will not survive, the weakest or the less lucky one, maybe. You have a few programs who simply have been wiped out. You can speak about SpaceJet, Energy from Mitsubishi. You can speak about others. Bombardier, it happened a little bit before, but probably the former Bombardier without Airbus would have not survived the C series, given their financial situation. Probably now we are almost sure that to stop the A380 3 years or 4 years ago. When was it? 3 years ago? Can't remember exactly. I think 3 years ago. Even though it was heartbreaking for everyone, we're now sure that it was the right decision. So you see an acceleration of things which were in the pipe. C series, emerging. 747 is discontinued now. 777X, will it survive? We don't know. And you see it with the supply chain also. You see a consolidation of the supply chain. We see it in France with merger. In other words, the market is cleaned, will be cleaned much faster than it would have been without this crisis. And we just talk about the present. I guess in the one of your next question, we're going to do a bit of perspective, how we see the things moving in the future. But this is how I see that. We're going to have a healthier and stronger players for the one that remain. This is the way I see it. And Airbus is going to be one of them for sure.
I do hope that pilots don't start working remotely either. It's not very reassuring yet, but although I'm pretty sure we could fly the planes without pilots already. But what about you, Leonard? And maybe that's kind of like a double question as well. But what are the kind of like new demands that those airlines are making? What are the new stuff coming up? And so I'm guessing that's kind of like a spying game, right? Like if airlines need some stuff, they need the plane makers as well to, or at least some of the providers, and including the plane makers to make that happen. So what are the new stuff coming up? What are the new opportunities, the innovation that the industry came up during this period?
I think it's obvious that at the surface, the focus of the airline have been more on survival than innovation. But I'm thinking on the surface. But at the same time, all airlines were forced to rethink their business model. For some of them, it's easier. And again, here we are talking about the private-owned airline because it's for them easier to lay off people or to do so. For a small, I would say, strong anecdote. 1 year ago in Dubai, Emirates were having daily meeting with staff in hotel where they were laying off per day over 1,000 people. Just to give you an idea of the cataclysm. That means some airline definitely they use the opportunity to streamline their structure to reduce the cost, and I observe a shift from any kind of business model towards what I call the receipt of the low-cost carrier model. They realize that to have plenty type of different type of aircraft in the fleet is very costly. They observe that we assist a shift. A few years ago, I was writing an article and I mentioned if you look 50 years ago, at the time of Queen Elizabeth, the people were using paquebot like it was the travel way. And for the airline industry, we face similar situation when you look how you fly with the 380, flatbed, etc. All the fancy stuff. And slowly, I think this crisis will push back the airline industry to a usual way of transportation, like a train or a buses. I mean, and the emergence when I observe for me the emergence of the pandemic, it's a strong push on what we call the premium economy. this started, I have to admit, already before the pandemic, where airlines were started to reduce the size of the business class. The first class almost disappeared, because when you compare business class and 5 years ago, a business class and the first class, what was the difference? It was not so much. I mean, we observe a shift, and I think for the OEM, it's also what we observe. The airline are looking for smaller aircraft, obviously more fuel efficient, and with more focus on the economy class and the premium economy. And I believe this trend will be the major move for the year to come. And also, I would say, even though it's difficult, I'm currently supervising one of the executive MBA student who is just almost finished with this thesis, and is working in this subject of aircraft who are the winner. Is focusing on the leasing, the lessor, and who is the winner. And I was telling him, for me, one of the winners are basically the airline who were stronger before the crisis, because as Arnaud mentioned, for the OEM, it's same for the airline. The airline who were already struggling before the crisis. Obviously, what's happened with the crisis, it's accelerated them. Even though we look overall, the number of bankruptcy 19, 20, 21 are not a big difference. We are around 35, 40 airlines. And also there is still a lot of airlines. This year, I count almost 20 new startup airline project or who already started. That means innovation, investors still believe on the future, on the potential of the industry, but obviously in another way, on the flatbed, all those nice things. I think it will slowly disappear, or because also I don't know if we will speak now about the cost, but obviously the airlines, they will have to make money, and so far people used to fly business class, etc. They will willing to pay much more. Basically, they were subsidizing the other, and this paradigm need to change.
Thanks, Leonard. And so to bounce on that, so Ghislaine just asked a question online, and I was going to bounce on the same thing. So we had Fatma from Etihad that I think you know probably. She was on our kickoff talk, and she talked about how much Etihad has invested in sustainability, and even before the pandemic happened, and so that they actually maintained its strategy despite the current chaos. And so the question that Ghislaine is coming up with is, do you think that investing in the environmental footprint will get the airlines out of the crisis, or at least put them as an advantage as opposed to the others that haven't done so? Is that a competitive advantage to develop to become a sustainable airline today, or it's still like kind of like a secondary concern, and you can do it only if you have the money that maybe Etihad has, but if you're surviving, that's just kind of like second tier concern?
Here, I have to express a bit my doubt. I think it's obviously I observe what Etihad is doing, because I know Etihad since their first day of operation, I mean, a long time ago. And I see it more as I would say more marketing, even though most of the airliners, they are looking for biofuel. Yes, this is a way, but I believe that the environmental footprint will change when Arnaud business stream will be able to come with new generation of engine, aircraft, etc. I think what we are doing now, or we intend to do, is just to improve and to get good feeling. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of those. Even though we have to do so, but it will not make the difference we need in the industry to be really seen as a green.
Okay, so what you're saying is basically like there's a lot of investment, but it's a bit of a PR stunt, or maybe sometimes even like greenwashing. So not necessarily Etihad, but it's not really what's going to make a dent in making the industry sustainable. And so the second part of Ghislaine's question is more to Arnaud, and it's bouncing on that, which is there was the Council Aviation Recovery Task Force for the ACAO ended up in 2 days ago, and came up with one vision for aviation recovery, resilience, and sustainability. So I don't know, beyond the global pandemic. I don't know if you're aware of that, but kind of like mixing the whole together. Like, do you see aircraft makers like Airbus and Boeing making big moves towards making the industry more sustainable, making planes carbon efficient, or what's the tech there, and are they actually making a reference to that?
It's for me?
Or is it again like for someone else down the line, like for some of the suppliers, like to actually do that, so that you can,
I think,
plug that into the plane? So
I think there is no choice, right? So there is no choice, and it's a amazing opportunity to grow for the industry, but for the world, for the society at large. So you quoted the ICAO targets. Yes, they are the European Union also planned for 2050. If I summarize, there are two main dates, which are 2030 for the green emissions, then 2035 and 2050. So there is not a single company, corporation, country, or group of countries who don't have a target. So the target may differ a little bit, but they are all going in the same direction. And this is just, when you think about it, what an extraordinary challenge for us, but also for the young generations. And in our industry, it's probably equivalent to the beginning of the industry 100 years ago, when in the last 50 years, we had such a challenge, which is to completely change our industry, right? We see that with the UAM, we spoke about it, but the decarbonation is a challenge, an opportunity, but it's also, I believe, a question also of survival. Because you see in 2 years how the mindset has changed. We've changed from, and we were a bit into the greenwashing. I'm not talking about only aerospace, greenwashing at large before. You take a product, you paint it green and say, oh, this is green. No, you now have a generation of not only green people, an entire generation at large who think and is green and who is very demanding. They ask questions. The day Guillaume Faury announced last year, we're going to work on a hydrogen airplane with an entry into service in 2035. The day after, you had in the blogs, in internet, all the social networks, comments, critics, questions from the young generation. Okay, you say that, but is it really green? How the hydrogen is going to be produced? Do we need traditional power plants to produce the hydrogen? So it doesn't make sense, blah, 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 blah. You know, there is a challenge, there is an effusion of ideas, and which means that, especially the young generation, for them, there is no doubt. And and they immediately spot the greenwashing. So we have to be extremely serious with that. And we are serious with that. Another thing also which strikes me is that it's not anymore a differentiation in our industry, but in all industry. We all know the Porter strategy that dates the 1950s. You have to differentiate, to be cost leader, you have to be focused, etc. Let's ask ourselves the question: is to be green a differentiation factor? I believe that it's going to be less and less a differentiation factor. It's going to be our day-to-day life, our criteria. It's like if you were asking a company, do you have an email system? Or do you have internet? Of course I use internet. It's not differentiation, it's a tool. So the green transformation is simply a question of survival. So now the question is, everybody is green. The question is, the right questions are, what makes sense? How can I be a market leader in the future with this? How can I be a cost leader? Hydrogen is very nice, but how will it compare with cost with other type of technologies, etc., etc. So I need to, it's going to be our day-to-day digital revolution and green revolution. It's done. It's now running for everyone. So how do I maintain my differentiation, my focus, my cost leadership, etc., with those things, you know, with those two factors? And it's so exciting because we are reinventing the world. In other words, it's exactly the same magnitude probably that the industrial revolution in the 18th century.
We are, but at the same time, you two are not really painting a very bright and enthusiastic future for the airline industry. Basically, what I hear there is like airlines are doing a lot of greenwashing. Big companies, when they're trying, they're taking such a bash, and probably because they're late to the party, that they're afraid to do bold moves. So I'm guessing the real innovation, as usual, are going to come from smaller ones that will then be integrated by bigger ones. And so we have Vincent working on such a thing afterwards, and we actually will talk more about that between the relationship between corporate and startups in reinventing the industry. So that's for another discussion, but still quite an interesting one, and obviously a quite complex one to tackle. And for those who haven't done it, I can only recommend that you guys attend the Climate Fest. It's a good eye opener and understanding the kind of like the holistic context and in terms of climate change, and understanding the impact that we have, and especially the impact that we might have when we fly and this kind of stuff. So I really recommend to do it, because that's a good eye opener that allows you to kind of like open the thinking. So guys, we're getting to the end of our session. Unfortunately, I would continue for the whole day if I could, but we have other speakers lining up. If I asked you about 2030s, and we started talking about that, so I think Arnaud, you kind of answered the question already with saying that sustainability will be one of the biggest challenges. Leo, for you, the sustainability is not maybe the biggest one. What would be the biggest challenges for the industry? What would be another one? Or 10 years from now, what will the industry have to address?
No, in our briefing, you mentioned three major challenges, and I think for me, I would say the first one is securing the cyberspace, and then obviously I will the second one to build an economical clean energy, because it's nice, and I don't want to repeat what Arnaud rightly mentioned for the hydrogen. Okay, it's nice to talk about hydrogen, but we need to analyze the full industry to see if really it's independent of the technical aspect for the airline industry of hydrogen. But we need to really to have a global view. And the third element, who is also, I think, for the year to come, essential, is to make sure that we keep a resilient infrastructure overall.
And so the next question will be slightly different for you too, but so Leo, how will your job look like in the future, tackling those things? Like how it will impact the way you're providing services to your client? And Arnaud, will your next job actually be on any of those stuff, or will you be looking at something completely different than this industry?
Now, I will give conference to the global week of TBS, because it pays very well. So I will continue this job. It's super well paid. I want to do that.
It's known TBS pay very well.
Yeah, obviously you guys don't need money, so that's good. You're sober. So maybe a last one to open up on a bright note. How would you advise the new generation to come to position themselves on those challenges? Or maybe like one I like to ask is, what would be the tip you would give yourself if you were to go to school again and think about the challenges industry is tackling at the moment?
I would say I don't have any advice to give. I would say come back to industry. You know, I see a lot of startups, a new thing. Everybody, 90% of them are in e-commerce. You know, how to sell better this and that and this and that. Come back to industry. It's fascinating. What's happening now is fascinating. You see in UAM, urban air mobility, there are about 100 projects. One of them, Aero in Toulouse, is very exciting. The new space is very exciting. Not only Elon Musk, you have space startups everywhere. Decarbonation is fascinating. So these are a lot of areas where we need and we can bring a lot of new initiatives, new ideas. Forget about e-commerce; it's too competitive. Come back to aerospace.
I fully agree. A lot of innovation will come out of the aerospace and the related sector in the commercial space, etc. And that means I observe in the current generation, as you mentioned, everybody is talking about the disruptive technology, but those technology need to be implemented. And in the industry, there is, and the airline industry is still a lot of future. We mentioned a couple of times, there is still 20 plus startup airline in the pipeline. That means some airline will die, other will come back, but the airline industry will remain as something crucial for this generation to come to move around.
You named a few, Arnaud. There's a couple in Singapore as well that are interesting. There's a H3 Dynamics that's working on hydrogen and on the drone fleets. We have Ascent as well working on the urban mobility with this kind of like big drones as well. So there's a bunch of really cool stuff. And you, Vincent, mentioned Aura, and so Vincent is coming later on this panel. So perfect closing. Guys, thanks so much for taking the time, and I know the pay was definitely worth the coming here. Just for the people to understand, that's a joke. Obviously, Leonard and Arnaud weren't paid for that. We don't have the budget to pay such experts. So lure them into thinking that they're going to get a lot of contacts, and I'm going to have to pay a few beers on the back of this thing. So thanks so much for coming. That was a pleasure having you, and I hope you enjoyed it as well, and I hope we can meet again very soon for the follow-up of this conversation. We're going to follow up actually. Thank you. And we're going to follow up on a session that is quite linked to that actually, which is you guys said that a lot of the planes were going to the trash basically with the pandemic. They were not used anymore. We talked about the A380 that are not going to be in use anymore. A lot of them are being sent to the bin. And so we have Lionel next, who's going to talk about what will we do with those planes once they go to the trash. Thank you guys. Have a good Arnaud, a good evening. Leo, a good Sunday afternoon, and see you very, very soon. Cheers.
Thank you, and welcome, Lionel.
Merci à tous.
Lionel, can you plug in your camera so that we see your beautiful face and we can hear your beautiful voice? And I'm gonna send our friends backstage. All right. Hi, Lionel, how you doing?
I'm good. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, very well.
Fantastic.
And I think you actually just came back from a trade show on the airline industry as well, right? Like you were
yeah, absolutely. I was in Amsterdam those last few days.
Cool. So the business is taking off again. That's good.
Well, let's say it's back. Taking off, we'll see in the coming month, but obviously it's coming back slowly, and there are some positive signs that we are continuing tracking, and well, let's hope that let's say international transport, because European or Chinese, but we'll talk about it, are coming back. So let's hope that international transport is going to come back quickly.
Yeah, I hope so too, and I hope you can come back to Singapore again very soon.
I vote for.
So Lionel, I didn't actually say what you were doing. You're VP of Sales at Tarmac Aerospace. For those who don't know you as well as I do, can you give a quick intro about who you are and what have you done since TBS and what you're doing right now?
So I've graduated TBS from an MBA in management consulting in 2013. So soon 10 years ago. It makes me younger. I decided to go back to TBS at the time because I had a lot of different experiences, but I wasn't exactly sure how to use them or how to make them fruitful and how to enhance my career. So it was my choice to say, okay, let's go back, refuel, replug as an iPhone without any more energy, replug and do that. And my background is essentially in services and in aviation. I worked into VIP aviation for aircraft conversions when you turn a classic A320 or 737 into a VIP aircraft. So that was part of my activity. And then I worked in companies that were doing maintenance also for cabin. Maintenance for engine equipment, and more recently, so 2 years ago now, I joined the Tarmac Aerospace. I'll talk to you a little bit more about this company that is doing aircraft maintenance, recycling, and storage.
Thanks. And I disappeared for a second. I literally went to close the window because the plane was flying by. So,
sorry for that.
Thanks, Janet. So you did a bold move just before the pandemic, and apparently that was a good one since now you're working in an industry that takes care of the plane that are not in use, among others. And so we heard on the previous discussion and all around that many planes were stopped during the pandemic. Arno was saying that out of 21,000 planes worldwide, I think 14,000 were grounded. That's 2/3 of the fleet. What happened exactly? How did you see that from your own perspective?
Well, that was interesting to see how things happened. When the crisis began, we all saw that in, let's say, December and January, February 2020, last year. It seems ages ago, but it was only last year. That the sky was not closing at the same time everywhere. And when suddenly in March, people realized that the pandemic was spreading so quickly, and the sky closed nearly overnight. So what happened was two things. The first one is that a lot of airlines, they had to ground the aircraft immediately or almost immediately. So it was not as critical as September 11, but it was really looking like it. And it was even worse than September 11, which was let's say the previous major crisis in aviation, because it was worldwide, and September 11 was mainly in USA, but in this case it was almost worldwide. And as you imagine, the airlines, they're made to fly the aircraft, they're not made to ground the aircraft. So when overnight you have to ground, or within days you have to ground your whole fleet, you have a very easy problem that everyone would understand, is that you've got to find room to put those aircraft. So the first very big challenge for all the airlines, and if you take Lufthansa or British Airways or Singapore is a good example, is that you have in Singapore a very small airport, even if it is a big one, but you cannot store the whole fleet of Singapore Airlines at the same place because most of the time it's flying everywhere. So you have now to store your aircraft. That's the first problem. Find the room. The second is pay for the room. Because also the challenge of those airports is that their business model is that you pay as you stay by hour. But this is made for airlines that are flying. When you're not flying and the aircraft is not staying a few hours for a stopover, but has to stay for days or weeks or even months, I mean, the prices were just rocketing, and for the airlines, it was completely impossible to be able to pay the amounts, let's say the standard fee or the standard rates that those airports were asking for. So what happened was a crazy move where airlines had to stop, which they don't when they're made for flying. Airport has to accommodate a lot of aircraft that, again, their rates and their business model is not made for that. And all of that happening very suddenly. So we at Tarmac Aerosave were able to host a lot of aircraft. We had demands to host a lot of aircraft. We have been in the industry for 10 years and more in storing aircraft, but not exactly. And this is the other thing that is funny, is that not exactly for airlines, because not a lot of people know, but more than, let's say, 50 to 60% of the aircraft that are operated by airlines are not owned by the airlines. They're owned by leasing company, lessors. So we were storing aircraft for lessors, because when there is a lease ending and then the aircraft is transitioned to another airline, there is also this small moment where we store the aircraft. So basically, aircraft were staying with us a few days or a few weeks, sometimes a few months or years, but for a short period, and mainly for lessors. And now airlines have got this problem of storing aircraft. So in a few hours, we had our phone ringing like crazy. Honestly, it was absolutely unbelievable. And Air France or British Airways calling us to say we need to store aircraft, and we need to store big aircraft, because the first impact was worldwide travel. It was intercontinental and transatlantic travel. So wide bodies, as A380s, as Airbus A340s, and others needed to be stored very quickly. So we received many of them very quickly. So that's exactly what happened at the beginning of the pandemic. The need to stop and store those aircraft very quickly, and of course also for the airlines in their airport, the need to look after the aircraft at that moment. So this is the first effect of the pandemic.
And so you said like a lot of them were grounded, and you guys were parking them. But then as we know, when they're not flying, they still need to be maintained, right? And that's one of the things that Arno and Leo were mentioning as well, that as a cost. So how were they maintained when they were parked and probably outside of their usual zone? Because as you said, like if you're Singapore Airlines, you have your maintenance that's probably located in Singapore, and all of a sudden it's somewhere in a different park. So how's that taken care of?
Well, that was also another challenge, especially for the airlines, because when you're flying, the program that you're following to look after your aircraft is specific to the fact that the aircraft is a liner. So that's what we say airline. So there is like what we name line maintenance. So what you follow up on a daily basis for each flight. When you stop the aircraft, it's a completely different story, because when you stop the aircraft, you sort of put it on hold, or you put it in let's say a sleeping program. And this sleeping program is not easy to be followed, first of all, by lack of experience from the airline, because this is not their daily life and this is not what they're doing. When you stop an aircraft, also, you have to make sure that it's maintained in a way that it can return to service properly. And of course, the big challenge here during the pandemic is that what do you do? Because you're stopping an aircraft, but you don't know how long it's going to be. So is it a very short stop? And this is what the airlines were expecting at the very beginning. So if we take the case of Lufthansa, they kept a lot of aircraft in Germany. And when they realized that the situation is going to be worse, or Singapore, for example, when they realized that when the situation will get worse, then they start flying aircraft out. Singapore, they flew some aircraft to Australia. Qantas, they flew some aircraft in USA because they had some bases there. And a lot of American airlines also flew their aircraft within the desert to store them. But you have to look after the aircraft, and you cannot stop an aircraft without looking after it. So the challenge for the airlines was to do something that they're not used to do, maintain the aircraft while stored, and then we have to decide what type of program do you do? Because of course, if you know that you're going to store the aircraft, let's say for 1 week, you apply a certain preservation to the aircraft. You apply a certain cocooning to the aircraft. But when you know the aircraft is going to be stored for a much longer period, the way that we preserve and protect the aircraft is completely different. So that was also a challenge to know what track do you choose and what do you expect to do with the aircraft. Of course, when you store it, you have to maintain all the hydraulic system, the engines, the landing gear, have a permanent check on all the systems of the aircraft, etc. So that is something that you do, let's say, depending on the type, but on a weekly to monthly basis, depending on the system. So same for some airlines, it was difficult because this was not the type of operation that they had to go through usually. And we saw, especially when some 737 Maxes, for example, came out of storage, they discovered that there was some corrosion in some parts of the aircraft, on the engines, etc., because they were not used to store the aircraft. So it was another challenge. The first challenge was to find the room, and the second challenge was to store the aircraft properly. Lucky enough, because it was our activity for more than 10 years, we didn't have to face any problem on the storing of the aircraft. But the fact that there was a big wave of activity coming very suddenly.
And you have a fan in the audience, Cordula is saying thanks to Tarmac Aerosafe to keeping our beloved bird in good shape during those long obligatory parking times there. And I'm sure she's the voice of many of us. I can put my wife on that, for instance, who's scared of flying and who's always thinking about who's taking care of them. So now I can show her a picture of you now. So I'm guessing, especially for the old aircraft or for the ones that are not worth keeping in good shape for such a long time, especially in such an uncertain period, some of them must be trashed or decommissioned, as we sometimes hear. Do you do that? Do you actually trash the plane? And what kind of bin is big enough to trash the plane? How does that actually work?
Well, that's a good question, because we heard a lot of things during the pandemic, and a lot of people say, "Oh, that's the end of the A380. They all go to the bin. That's the end of 4 engines aircraft. They all go to the bin, etc." Well, things are a little bit more complicated than that. First of all, you could take an aircraft and take it to the bin. As you said, you need a large bin, but we all have at our house like recycling bins that we have to sort and separate the different things. It's exactly the same thing for an aircraft. But when you talk about that, we have to go back to the economics. I mean, the aircraft still have a value. And in many cases, the engines of the aircraft or the landing gear of the aircraft or the avionics of the aircraft still have a value. So you have companies that are brokers most of the time, that they're doing their business out of that. As I mentioned earlier, a good half of the world fleet is leased. So a lessor is purely a bank or a financial company with an initial value, a rent, and a remaining value. So at the end of the renting of the aircraft, the leasing of the aircraft, they will have a remaining value. And as a good financial person, they just want to clear that line and go to the next aircraft. So most of the time, what they will say is that, let's take an A320. Remaining value of an A320 maybe is $1 million. They will sell that $1 million aircraft to a broker that knows that there is value, as I said, in the engine, in the landing gear, in many parts of the aircraft, spare parts of the aircraft, where they can make money by selling them piece by piece. So what they do is that most of the time they will take an aircraft, buy an aircraft from the previous owner, leasing company in that case, and they will separate and they will, what we say, dismantle or port out every valuables from the aircraft, and they will sell those valuables back to the market, because of course they can continue flying in most of the cases. They can continue flying or go back to overall and continue flying. So the economic of this recycling of the aircraft really relies on the fact that you still have a lot of valuable goods on the aircraft equipments that can continue flying. Once you've done that, and let's say that this is average 30% of the aircraft, once you've done that, many companies in the world, they will just try to make, let's say, scrap the aircraft or make the aircraft disappear as quick as possible. And they don't want to spend any money on that. We in Tarmac Aerospace do things a little bit differently. When we were created more than 10 years ago by Airbus, Safran, and Suez, our aim from the very beginning was to say, once you've done that, and that you remaining with something that has got no more aviation or aeronautical value, so the rest of it, the waste of it, we have to make sure that we recycle it and we give it, as you do in your kitchen and separating the glass and the paper, etc. We have to separate all the materials of the aircraft to make sure that we give it a second life. And this second life is an A380 is 120 tons of aluminium. So of course, when you collect 120 tons of aluminium, you can put it back on the market. You can give it to a recycling company that is going to cut it into chip, melt it again, and deliver it to someone who's going to use recycled aluminium. And you can do that with many elements of the aircraft. Actually, you can do that with up to 60% of the aircraft. It has a cost, because we need to have hands and a lot of manpower to separate all the elements, separate the wiring, separate the carbon fiber, separate the composite material, separate the titanium from the aluminium, from the iron, etc., etc. So it has a cost, and we at Tarmac have decided that this is our core business, to make sure that the remaining of the aircraft, the final waste of the aircraft, is as minimal as possible. So today, on an average, 30% is those materials that go back to another aircraft, 60% that we are sorting out properly, and they are going to recovery channels, and the remaining 10% is around 8% that will go to places where it is burnt and to produce heat. So you can use that in a cement factory, for example, where you need a lot of heat to produce cement, or you can use that in a heating system to heat a hospital, for example, for the heating system of a hospital. And then the remaining 2% is the final waste. So this is sometimes some dangerous products, some oils, some kerosene that is dirty, etc. This is final waste. So the economic of the rest of the market really relies on the fact that when you take an old aircraft and you want to trash it, you have to take the valuable from the aircraft to finance the rest of your activity. In our case, We are pure service provider. And when our clients pay us to take those valuables, they also pay us to make sure that the final waste of the aircraft is managed properly. Of course, with the pandemic, we saw that a lot of people saying, oh, all those aircraft are going to trash. Yeah, but as I just said, the economic is working because you've got those valuables on the aircraft. So we didn't recycle or we didn't dismantle more aircraft during the pandemic than before, because you need the spare part of the aircraft to be sold to another operator. But if this other operator is not flying, he doesn't need spare part. And if he doesn't need spare part, no one is going to finance the dismantling of an aircraft. So you end in a situation where you store aircraft. Let's say that this is your captive market. You store aircraft because, or captive stock, because there's no one to buy the spare part. So I'm not going to finance as a broker. I'm not going to finance the dismantling of an aircraft if there is no client after. So the deal also at the moment in some cases, especially the A380 is a good example, is that we really don't know. When I say we, is our company, but anyone in the world, there's a lot of cases to say what's going to happen to the aircraft. Shall we take it and just cut it and no spare part and we just make it aluminium tomorrow for your toaster or who knows what as recycled? Or there is still some valuables on this aircraft. So the market and the economics of the market really relies on the fact that aircraft are flying. The more they're flying, the more that we can recycle aircraft because we're taking the valuables from the aircraft.
So as any circular economy, you need the wheel to keep spinning if you want the circular economy to circulate, right? But that's interesting. Then who pays for that in the meantime? Because if your deal is with the company to take care of the plane and to guarantee the transition, and now you cannot guarantee the transition, but they still want to get rid of it. So there's kind of like a shadow zone right there. So who gets screwed in the equation?
Well, that's another thing, is that if the aircraft belongs to a leasing company and no one wants the aircraft in the end because there is no one that is going to will to buy the aircraft, to recycle the aircraft and to take the valuables, go back to the market because there's no need, then you are the leasing company and you have to store the aircraft and wait. So for the moment, a lot of the leasing company had to store aircraft and wait for the market to move. So it's big financial institutions. I'm not saying that they're not suffering. I'm just saying that it's something that was not predictable for them, especially on the A380, where they made a first lease of, let's say, 10 to 12 years. The lifespan of the aircraft is 20 more, and most of the lease were 10 years. So now they end the first part of life, and the second part of life, and there's no issue, and there's no market. So what do? Am I continuing paying every month Tarmac or someone else to store the aircraft, waiting for better days? Or am I deciding to trash the aircraft straight away? And I don't even know if someone will buy spare parts from the aircraft, because we still don't know exactly what Emirates, what British Airways, what Singapore, what China Eastern, what ANA are going to do with the A380. So on this specific case of the A380, it's a very interesting story because this is very unpredictable, and you have to make a bet as the owner. Should I pay monthly and wait for the market to recover and see what's going on with the aircraft, or shall I just dump the aircraft and doesn't matter about the spare part, or decide to dismantle the aircraft, store the spare part, finance the dismantling of the aircraft, and then store what I believe is valuable on the aircraft in a logistical warehouse, as we do also for some clients.
And so about looking forward, when first you have the $1 billion question, the answer to the $1 billion question, when are we flying again normally, and then what are we going to fly with? And when that happens, is this the end of the dismantling business, or at the contrary, it's going to come back to where it was before, and we're just going to take a while to get rid of the stocks?
Well, there's two things to me. The first one is that with some aircraft stopping earlier than what was planned, we are going to have a lot of spare part available for companies to have access to. So that's going to be interesting, because in some cases, it will still continue to be quite interesting to operate old aircraft because you will have very cheap spare parts. So that's one part of the equation, saying like, okay, things are not going to stop overnight because we are going to have some available second-hand market, what we name green time. Okay, the available parts that can continue flying. That's one aspect. And as soon as this is existing, we will continue doing what we do. And then there is the other part saying, oh, there's new aircraft, hydrogens, electrical aircraft. I mean, there's many projects. And you say, oh, because there's those new aircraft, the activity is going to stop. Well, not exactly, because they will have an end of life to be managed. They will have new materials to be managed. If you think electrical aircraft, or if you think hydrogen, I mean, there will be new systems in the aircraft that at the end of life will still need to be recycled properly. So it will be a change in the equation for us on the type of aircraft that in years to come, maybe 5, 10, 20 years to come, that we are going to have at the end of their life. But it won't stop our activity. It will just change what we are recycling. A good example on that is some 20 years ago, or the aircraft that were delivered were mainly aluminium and very little composite. Now the aircraft, it was like 80% aluminium, 20% composite. And now the aircraft that are delivered, like the A350, is 80% composite and carbon fiber, and less than 20% aluminium. So there is a change, but the need to have a proper dismantling and a proper end of life of the aircraft won't change.
Got it. So we could continue for the whole day, but unfortunately we don't have all day, and our next speakers are already pushing the door and yeah, beating on the door to get in. But since we're talking about the future, maybe we can finish with some of the notes for the looking at the future, and especially if we think about 2030. What would you think would be the main challenges for the society and the planet, and obviously the one that might be linked to your industry in particular, but in general?
Well, there is in any crisis there is always some aspects that just hopefully open our eyes on what's going on. I see the fact that aviation suddenly realized that things can change overnight. That aviation is and the aeronautical industry is much more fragile than we had imagined, and the way that all the system on that is working was never thinking that it was going decreasing. So there is a big change in the way of thinking on that, and with what we heard during the pandemic and just before with the flights flickcam, the flight shaming, etc. What I see in the years to come is that what we could have considered in the past as greenwashing in some cases, including our company, sometimes saying, oh, well, it's just greenwashing for Airbus. Now there is a completely change in saying, okay, guys, now it's time to do something substantial about what we do. And in 2030, for me, we have to reach what I will name 000 sustainability. A perfectly sustainable way to produce aircraft. That's the first zero, so zero impact in the production. A perfect way to operate the aircraft. That's the zero impact of any airline on how they operate the aircraft during the time that they used. And the zero impact, environmental impact once they're recycled. We're not there yet, but there is a big focus on that. And I hope with all the projects and all the things that we're doing, we are getting there. And I will be, I'm quite positive in the fact that now it's time for everyone to just realize that we are going in that direction. So I think for me, 2030 is the target. Airbus was very ambitious about the new technologies that they want to embark on new aircraft, such as hydrogen, but not only. So this is for me what we're aiming for, this track for the aviation market. A very little thing that I will add is that I think also in our industry, but it's the case in other industries, we just have to think a little bit more globally and not see just our industry as something, but see, okay, what is the aviation in terms of carbon emissions, but what is the rest? The shipping industry, the automobile industry, etc. Because some are very easy to shame, but some are very difficult to realize what is their real impact. So having a proper, better, wide figure of what's going on. We never think of the carbon emissions of our Google Gmail account, but we are having thousands of emails that are laying on servers. So this is also something that we have to think a little bit more widely.
And so how does that challenge impact your business specifically, or your job in particular? And if you can make it like very, very short.
Yeah, well, shortly on the job is seeing what is manufactured today, what is going to be recycled tomorrow and how we can follow and support this if I'm really looking for our recycling activity. On a more large perspective, and to make it short, is also to see what is the impact of everything we do, not only on our daily job, but we go to a show. We just mentioned that we went to a show. Okay, what is the impact of that show? What is the impact of what I'm doing? What is the impact of my job, of my position, of what the emissions that I'm giving, etc. So I think, to me, the individual perception of the pollution that we're all generating is something that is also going to be a big change.
So in one word, that's going to be the last one for the future generation who are watching us. How would you advise them to position themselves on those challenges you want to?
Well, don't be frightened of change because it will be there, but don't put in the bin everything that was done, because I feel sometime that there is a little bit of will for complete novelty and to have a complete reset of the system. Everything is not bad in the system, and there are some good things. They have to be improved. They have to be challenged. So I would say to them, understand why we're here, understand what you can improve on the system, and at the same time, try to be, as you mentioned, try to be circular in the economy, try to loop it back. But if you don't understand how things work, to build a completely new system and to build something completely new out of the box could happen sometime, but it's not that easy. So you have to work in an environment that you have to understand. So for future generation, I would say, understand and challenge.
Cool. Thank you so much, Lionel. That's going to be the insightful word of the end. Thank you so much. And I think the one number that I will remember is that already today, 2% of our planes, thanks to companies like Tarmac, only 2% of the planes are not recycled. So that's already a good move. Now we just have to make them fly clean, and will be a good way ahead. Thanks so much. Goodbye for now, and I hope we get to catch up soon. I'm gonna get our anxious speakers next, and be glad that you didn't say too much bad things about stuff that you can embark on an Airbus, because we have Cecilia who's exactly working on that, and we have some of our speakers as well working on making the flight cleaner as well. So Cecilia, Yann, Vincent, you can connect your camera, and we can see you. Lionel, bye bye. Thanks again. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And although we would very much like to moderate this panel, I'm going to let someone more qualified than me, Yann. So I'll let you get on that while people are giving a big applause to you guys, as Cecilia specifically requested. So a big round of applause for our new panel. Cheers, guys. I'll be just in the backstage if you need me.
Thank you, Julien. A pleasure to see you. Normally, I see Julien on a daily basis in Singapore, but he's in Europe right now. Nice to see you through Zoom. Welcome, Cecilia. Welcome, Vincent. It's a pleasure and honor for me to have you today. I'll say a quick word on myself. So Julien asked me to moderate this event. I'm super excited to see, because I've been working in the topic of startups, corporate changing aerospace. It's been close to me. I've been working in corporate for over 20 years, most of it in aerospace. And now I switch towards the more entrepreneurship area and sustainability. So it's very interesting for me and an honor to have you. Maybe before we start, and because the theme is about a startup, I just wanted to remind everyone about the TBS Foundation. And there's an aspect of the TBS Foundation, if you can support them, which is dedicated to entrepreneurship and helping the students launch their own companies. Since 2012, 46 have been created, 160 jobs have been created thanks to that. So please go and check it out. And if you can support the foundation, that'd be awesome. Back to the topic of the day. Cecilia, maybe we'll start with you. Could you tell us who you are? When did you go through TBS? What did you do as a program? And what have you been doing?
Sure. So, hi everyone. Thank you, first of all, for letting me be here. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. Really happy to contribute and help as well the TBS Foundation with some additional topics. So, I'm Swedish. I went to TBS about 5 years ago for the Aerospace MBA and graduated from that. So, that's me. Very short, a bit longer. I have spent quite some time outside of Sweden. So I've been through Australia, Singapore, and now France, where I've worked both for startups and for big corporations. And right now I'm in a sort of in between in a small Airbus subsidiary called NavBlue. So I have a foot in both, let's say. So that's me.
Thank you very much. Vincent?
Hello everybody, bonjour tout le monde. My name is Vincent. I was a TBS student and out of school 2001, and very happy to join you today and to have prepared this video with Jan and Cecilia, and thanks to the support of Julien and the TBS Foundation. Very happy to be part of this great initiative. So I started my career within purchasing departments and customer support for 10 years within Airbus. I resigned from Airbus to join Zodiac Aerospace as a head of customer support for the entities dedicated to supporting customers around the world for business class seats, first class seats, economy class seats. And then I moved within the Safran Seats organization as a vice president for sales of services for Middle East, Africa, and Europe and China. And then I left Safran almost 2 years ago now to join Aero, that is the third aircraft manufacturer in Toulouse and dedicated to produce and develop two-seater aircraft that will turn into electric versions. Plus, we announced a 19 regional commuter that will be an electric hybrid aircraft. And I am currently the CCO and COMEX member of Aero.
Thank you. So definitely the two best speakers we could dream of, talking about change, talking about startups, corporate. You guys had the same career. Cecilia focusing on change management a lot, and we'll have the view from Vincent about innovation and what can do a startup to change the industry. And so let's split it into two. Let's start with corporate. We started the three of us our careers with this. How would you describe, each of you, what it is changing an industry or changing a large corporate? What are the advantages, what works, what doesn't work? Cecilia, you're the change expert. I'll leave you the floor, and then we'll have the view from Vincent trying to change an industry through a startup. You're on mute, Cecilia. Sorry.
There we go. Thanks.
That's done. You had to open it up, and we're dead. We're good now.
Yeah, to do that. So I'd say that for any big corporation, it doesn't really matter which industry you're in. You work in an environment with a lot of legacy. You work in an environment where habits are deeply ingrained, where people sometimes have what is very, very well known in innovation circle as a not invented here syndrome. And I would say that a lot of the change, when you want to drive it, has to be very, very well anchored. So you have to anchor the wish to change, and this is the basics of change management anyway. You have to have that support from your top management to change. That is really key. And then you have to make sure that people understand what the change is about and how they can play a part of it and why it benefits them. If you miss out on these, let's say, key areas, it's very difficult to change a big company, big corporation. It doesn't matter which industry you're in. So I think that's a short answer to that for me.
Yeah, very cool. We were during preparation, we were talking about stakeholder management being one of the key. You insisted on that one.
Yes, and you're right. Stakeholder management is, for those who listen to us who are fresh out of school or still at school, stakeholder management is a big word. It's a big topic. It means that you need to go around to everyone who has a stake in the change, who is impacted by the change, and make sure that they understand what it's about and get their buy-in. That is something that requires a lot of motivation, a lot of energy, a lot of grit. It requires a lot of you believing in the change as well to drive it forward. And very often you will need the support as well of that top management and those sponsors to come in and help you. So that is stakeholder management as a quick view for those who don't know what that is.
Thank you very much. Vincent, after spending years in big corporation, and now you have the view from the startuper, maybe something popped up to you a bit more of what was good, what was not good at the time, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm really conscious that having started my career with big companies, with robust organizations, has definitely been a plus. And I don't want to make any games between startup against corporate and big companies, but rather trying to see what could be taken as best practice in respective worlds in order to make sure that when we have the chance, as it's the case now with, I don't like the real name of startup because we are rather a young company than a startup now with Aero, but nevertheless, we are considered still as a startup. It's clear that there is a real benefit to start from a white sheet and being able to develop concepts, especially when we had the opportunity to consolidate and to identify within the big company what could have been done and have not been done, and what should have been done. And that was it's very funny at that point to identify what is our real contribution as just managers and employees, and to be part of this revolution. And I heard cautiously everything that Lionel within Tarmac just explained before our interviews now. And we are neighborhood in Toulouse Francazal Airport, so we are able to exchange. And I think that it's question is, what is our impact? What is our contribution to make things being changed in the right direction and with real added values? So I would say that when you have the comfort of coming from a big company that have a robust infrastructure organization, you can focus on the added value for each task with the right experts at the right level, and you have a level of expertise that is really appreciable. On the other hand, sometimes to move on some quick developments or quick concept, you can have some long-lasting period of time.
Inertia.
Not really, yes, matching the customer expectations and the rhythm of business development. So I don't want to go with the easy ideas between the startups against corporate and big companies. I just rather will insist on it's important to take all the best we can in every experience and every background that we are able to develop within our different experience, and trying to avoid some let's say easy mistakes when you restart with the agility of a startup.
Definitely, and you talked about startups. So we basically mentioned that on corporate, the pluses are you have the force of power, which can be an inertia someday, and mobilizing the teams can take more time rather than building a new team on a startup. Can you tell us about that a bit more, Cecilia? Because that's your specialty also, to doing the change and integrate and make this co-innovation between startup and huge companies, right? Integrate them. How do you see that?
So it's a really complex topic. It's interesting you bring this up, because I wrote about this in my MBA thesis about at school, as many of you are right now, with all these fantastic ideas about, oh, we need this, and then we have to be like this, and this, and this, and this. And, you know, I had the whole framework worked out and how it was going to work between startups and big corporations. When you come out into the real world, it's often very far away from what the theory in academia is about. In terms of what really happens. So we working, and also having worked both with Airbus Biz Lab and other parts of Airbus, and also in my own company where we integrated a startup, I think the main thing is to, again, you have to set the expectations on every side when you work between big and small. People don't always understand each other, don't always understand the other side of things. So the big corporation will not always understand what the small ones are doing, and the small ones are not always understanding what the big ones are doing. So there's a lot of information that needs to go on, and there's a lot of sharing, a lot of explanation. There is a lot of also trying to get into the other shoes, if you like. It's a bit like a relationship, honestly. I come back to this human part all the time, but it's about people wanting to meet halfway. If you do that and try to sort of figure out what the others are going through, things can work out really nicely. And I think that's really the key. It's about being open and also giving the benefit of the doubt and giving things time, because we are all people and we can't just switch overnight. Nobody does that, at least not in a sustainable way. So we have to also accept that change takes time and understanding new people takes time. So it's really about building that relationship.
And that can be seen as a challenge because, as Vincent, you were mentioning earlier when we prepared, one of the issues for a startup is that it's the shortage of cash, and time goes super fast for a startup and cannot wait. Can you tell us from your side, from the startup, if you collaborate with big organization, how can you bridge that? What's the way, I would say, to make that easier? Not wait 2 months to know the participants of a meeting when you have 1 month of cash in front of you, right? Kind of.
Maybe we should ask Vincent. Vincent, what do you do to make big corporations that you work with understand that you are in dire cash need?
I was asking to him, actually. Yeah, I wanted to know from the consumer.
No, it's very, very good and very relevant questions, because the reality, and when I talked about the comfort, cash is part of this comfort, because when you have great perspectives and projections of turnover, and you have already, let's say, some cash that has been initiated for years and years, and you have some secured markets, and within Aero, we have a really good backlog in front of us, and we announced earlier this week letter of intent for 200 of our regional commuter electric hybrid era electric regional aircraft, and we are on the right rhythm for this segment on the 19 seats, and we are in the right tempo of the two-seater market too, for the training aircraft for both civil and military pilots, and we are in the right rhythm. But in the other hand, you're right, highlighting that it's very important to take into consideration that focusing on having the cash to be able to hire the right people, the PhDs, the engineers, the mechanics, and to have the right people at the right place to make sure that you can meet the success that is targeted. This is key, and if it's not properly managed, and especially the fundraising, very tricky part for startups. You can have the great product, you can have the great concept. Everybody around the institution, around the organization can slap on your back saying, guys, you had the right concept, but you have to make sure that within 6 months, 9 months, 12 months time, you are still alive to make this being properly presented to the market through the development, the prototyping, the production, and the delivery. So yeah, it's a very challenging part, and we had the opportunity to talk with people even at the level of the government to highlight that in France, especially, it's sometimes difficult to raise some fund when you are in this famous middle class status, not at the seed capital level, not at the, let's say, ready to industrialize capital, but somewhere in between. So that's a real challenge. Hopefully, we have a really dynamic and active people within the team, including 3 founders, Jérémy Caussade, our CEO, Fabien Raison, our COO, and Wilfried Dufaux, our CPO, that have created Aura 3 years ago. And the anniversary was just 1 month ago. And after 3 years, we were able to make one aircraft flying, the Integral R, that is the prototype for the aerobatic aircraft that will be developed and industrialized for the flight schools, for the military application. So it was a real success, and we did it with the love money in the very beginning, with the trust of 43 shareholders that believed in our positioning, our market, and the expectation of the market to renew the, let's say, legacy fleet. So first, it's important to target the right market that needs to have kind of milky cow products in order to make sure that you can success meeting the customer's expectation. Then to have the right shareholders around the board in order to make sure that they can let you go with your strategy, your vision, and then being able to open the doors to selected shareholders profiles that will be, let's say, matching your company values and soul. And that's exactly what has been done. We accommodated the first fund, Innovacom, that used to invest in tech companies, and they identified us as a digital native company, Aero, as a good company to play with. So we are now robust, talking about financing. We are developing, and we are currently closing Series A fundraising. And you're right, Jan, it's very important to make sure that this step within the company story is properly managed. Even if you have the product and positioning, this is a very, very tricky period.
And that's a bit the challenge you were mentioning is that there's this passage to pass where you need funds and investor wants you to have traction to give your funds, but in order to have traction, you need funds. So it's the phase where it's going like this, but the good thing is, we were talking about that, Cecilia, last time also, is that smaller structures are much more efficient to use the cash. They have less fixed costs. So in the end, you have a reactivity. You build a team around the purpose. You don't face the inertia. So if we look at specifically the aerospace and the challenge to 2030, obviously, and it was mentioned in the previous conferences, decarbonation is one of the key challenges. How do you see it? How do you see the main challenge to be addressed in order to get there? Cecilia, please.
The main challenge to reach decarbonation, or the main challenge to remain sustainable? It's a very big question. It's a really very big question. To be honest, there has to be a balance between what you do day to day. Again, the big corporations have an advantage with having cash, being able to, continue their business at the same time as they in parallel develop other things. While as companies such as Vincent's don't have that advantage. I believe that obviously, again, sponsorship to reach that is really important. You have to have a clear shared vision to get to any goal you want to set. I also think that having that going through when we now look at young graduates, I mean, we're listening to this conference as well. It's finding that talent and hiring those people who are passionate about making that happen in the future, and who also come with new knowledge that the industry may not yet have, because of the legacy industry we have been working in. So I do believe that this new talent is very, very important to capture, to be able to build forward. So large corporations need new talent. I know people are attracted, depending on who you are, will be attracted to startups or to big corporations. My hope and my faith is that both of these ecosystems will benefit from this new talent going forward.
Definitely, and so that's on the talent and resources. And Vincent, aerospace is a relatively conservative industry, right? You were mentioning when we were preparing, that's a big hurdle. Things take time to change, and again, we refer back to the startup urgency and speed. There's the commercial reality on top of the technical challenge. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, and that's true that. In the aeronautical field, we like new ideas, great disruptive concepts, but in reality, this industry hates disruption. That's a good news for us, because we are not that disruptive. We are just within our development of the era, the electrical regional aircraft. We are just using proven technologies already existing, and we focused on electric propulsion philosophy with batteries and battery management system and turbo generator able to recharge batteries during the flights. And yeah, it's something that will make sure we will be successful within 2004 for the first flight. We talk about a lot of challenges that are ahead of us. You were talking about human resources, and I saw a little comment from Cordula that is chatting online. Hello, and she is right. For me, human, and I will come back on your question for the technique aspects and the technological challenges. But there is only wealth in man. That's Jean Baudin, that is a century French philosopher that just wrote that, and I think it's very true, especially within those startups adventures, when you really need to make sure that you have the right people on board, and when people are on board, to keep them engaged, motivated. And for this, you don't have any choices than being the best and being sharp and relevant in everything that you develop within your teams. So the engagement of people and the entrepreneurship spirit, and I think that I heard a lot about entrepreneurship here during this today conference. This is a key, and human resources are the key in any successes of that kind of adventure. So now to come back on the technological aspects, clearly, just to highlight some of the, let's say, challenges that we faced within Aero. We have some challenges on flying some aircraft that already existed in a legacy mode, but to make sure that thanks to the new technology and new bricks that we could secure and patent, of course, we are able to break some cliche that the green mobility is not a reality before 2035, 2036. And a lot of people are talking about hydrogen. We rather focused on electric and electric hybrid technologies. And for that, we worked not trying to reinvent everything from scratch. We worked with experts and wise people that are part of our steering committee. And when we take, and I will not list all of them, but we have very talented people that worked for 35 or 40 years within aeronautical need and aeronautical fields. Clearly, we are accumulating over 1,000 years of background and experience. And I think that the first thing is to remain humble and just to take into consideration what is already existing and what we can improve, and just to try to make it to match the challenges and the expectation of the market. And that's what we did with our two-seater aircraft, because we started with this two-seater. We started with thermal engines to make those two-seater flying side by side for a pilot and an instructor. We want that the safety is at the top level, like the 21st century aircraft. We have a BRS, parachute system, that will be able to both save aircraft and pilots in case of any concern. And we developed all the technology to make sure that we are able to fly, absorbing the load factors to make the aerobatics and the UPRT, the upset recovery trainings, that became mandatory now by EASA since January 2020. And based on this two-seater, we developed in parallel the electric propulsion of the same aircraft with the same structure on fuselage and wings. So we have a kind of proof of concept for our 19 packs that will use the same type of electric engines, batteries, and battery management system, and to put that the right industrialization level to make sure that we can invest and amortize all the costs incurred by the development of electric propulsion on this two-seater, and we prepare the path and the way and the technological bricks that we need to secure to develop our 19-seater. And this is the reason why we're going to make this being a reality with the first flight of the 19-seater by 2024.
And then which is a smart way, because as you mentioned, you start with the 19 now because the regulation is much more.
Yes, and CSN 23 is from 1 to 19 packs. So
exactly.
The job on the 2-seater is already a good capitalization for the work until the 19-seater.
A good strategy, definitely. So we're always going back to the resources. So that leads me to the last question, because I have to be conscious of time. The recommendation for the future graduates. I recall, Cecilia, you were mentioning that your first straight answer when we discussed about it was like, do what works for you. Big corporate, small corporate. Can you develop on that?
Yeah, I think what's really important is even if you don't know what you want to do when you grow up, because there's many of us who don't know, and just having Jan as one example who switched
after 20 years
at 40.
I'm a bit slow.
That's totally normal, and that's okay. If you know what you want to do in 10 years' time, that's great. If you don't, that's fine. The point is, make sure that when you go through those interviews, those job searches, the people you meet, even if you can do a long engineering list of pluses and minuses, that's good. But also you will also have that gut feeling of where you feel that there's a good fit. If the hiring manager that interviews you feels like a good fit, then he probably or she probably is. If that is a person who can guide you and help you grow, whether you're in a startup or in a big corporation, that's something to go for, because you will learn. You'll learn tons of things in a startup. It will depend only on you, because they have so little resources that if you don't deliver this quick, you won't be helping them. If you're in a larger corporate, if you're fine with that, that's great. If you're not fine with that, larger corporations have the advantage of guiding more, providing training, you get more time, etc., etc. So there are pros and cons with both. But really, gut feeling to me is a great indicator and should not be, let's say, dismissed.
And you change in life, right? You change in life. You get old, so your vision might change in your life. But as long as you do what's good for you and you build your own vision, Vincent, you were mentioning that you got to be resilient in order to achieve it, right? And you see from the startup we're discussing, we're back to that. Most importantly, you got to be doer, try it, right?
Yeah, and that's a real discovery when you jump into the a young company like Aero. We started with 2 people early 2020, and our founders, Jeremy, Fabien, and Wilfried, started the adventure. And without any paper, so we are a real digital native company. And with the first flight of the Integral R, 18 months only after the creation of the company. And you're right, the importance of investing time, energy on all those subjects make the difference. And when you are in a company like us, that we are now 80 people, and we will be roughly 120 next year. The target for us is to be around 1,500 when the ERA, the electric regional aircraft, will enter into service. Clearly, you discover day by day that based on the comfort of the big groups you come from, that's my case, when you jump into this adventure, you don't have any other choices than being a doer. You need to be a doer. You cannot rely on existing structures, existing standards, existing teams that are dedicated to such and such subject. Of course, we have an extended expertise within our organization at Aero, but you have to do most of the job by yourself. So a bit like putting you in danger again, but that's so good, because that's the best situation where you can give the best of yourself and the best of people that are working with you. So this is definitely a great adventure, a great challenge, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. My message will be: don't be afraid. Nobody will ask you to be perfect, to be the best in every field that you have to manage, but make sure that you have the right people. And if you have not the 360 degrees backgrounds, that is basically 100% of all of us, around the call and around the world. Just select people that will be able to, of course, match the philosophy, the spirit, the values, and being able to bring their added value to make sure that we can all focus on the same target that is delivering the best result as possible. So don't be afraid.
Thank you.
And go, and you will be
do it.
And our vision for 2030, will be to make sure, and it will be done starting 24 for the first flight, be able to fly 400 kilometers only with batteries, with 19 people, able to take off and land within 600 meters, and decreasing by 97% the CO2 emissions. That's much more than a view. This is a reality, and we're going to make it fly. And with the help of the turbine and the turbo generator, after those fully electric 400 kilometers, we're going to fly additional 1,400 kilometers. That would be a total of 1,800. And even with this, we will have reduced by 53% the CO2 emission. So that's our vision for 2030. And we're going to
challenge. Thank you very much. The time is gone. I think we covered all the questions and the big conclusion on doing and really being true to your vision. I think those are the two keywords that came back many times. Thank you very much, Julien.
Thank you very much for letting me.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you for accepting my first ever role as a moderator.
You were very good.
I was lucky to have very good guys.
You were very good. You were very good. And you gave us the international dimension of these calls. Thank you.
I'm gonna go to bed now, right? Thanks, Julien. Up to you.
Yann, for connecting so late, and thank you both for giving our insights. Sorry, I might start to articulate again. Next we'll have someone that goes a bit higher than you guys. He goes to space, Mathieu. But now he's looking at Earth from space and looking at how the exploration of space can help us take care of our planet as well. So a good continuation for this talk to take the point of view even higher and to look at with the lasers on our planet. So thank you so much for joining, and wish you the three of you a good continuation. Yann, we'll see each other very soon, obviously. But Vincent, Cecilia, I hope I'm gonna have the pleasure to meet in person sooner rather than later. And
thank you.
Thanks again for joining.
Thanks for the TBS Foundation. Bye.
And Vincent is right to remind that this event is for the benefit of the TBS Foundation. So go to the TBS Global Week website. There's a tab Foundation, and there you can make a donation. It's very easy, it's very quick, and it will make a difference for whoever doesn't have the need to study, and will help bring some more diversity into our school. So without further ado, Mathieu, sorry we made you wait a little bit. The previous speakers, not that they're gone, I can say they were very talkative and they didn't want to go, so we had to keep them out. Gonna get in trouble for that. Thank you for joining. Can you try your sound to see if we can hear you well? I think you're on mute. So
yes. Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
I was in mute. You're right.
Yeah. So thank you for joining this session. When we prepared this session, I was saying that we were gonna impersonate Jeff Bezos and take our audience to space, but you told me it was a very, very bad idea. So then we decided to take the way of Elon Musk and maybe to come back to beautiful Earth. So we'll do a bit of both, but if you think about it, that's obvious that going to space is probably the best way to get the best view on Earth. Although most of us will probably never get to experience this trip. So, but anyway, to do the trip at least virtually, very happy to have a human within us. Can you tell us a little bit more about you, maybe for the one who don't know you yet and haven't had the pleasure to meet you before and don't know what you're doing for a living?
Okay. Yes, of course, with pleasure. So hopefully you hear me well. So to introduce myself, I'm Mathieu Larocque. I'm working in Thales Alenia Space in the strategy and innovation team for 4 years now. So I start first to be graduated from in robotics and artificial intelligence from Toulouse University, and then I start a career as a system engineer and system architect in space domain. So I had the opportunity to work in projects such as Galileo, ECNOS, and observation domains in TAS. Before changing and restarting my to study something different at Toulouse Business School. So I started an executive master in 2016. And when I restarted this study, then I had the opportunity to move inside the Thales Alenia Space to join the strategy and innovation team to participate, to think about what is a space company nowadays and how we could perform with the current opportunities we have. So in parallel of that, I continue with TBS still with an executive MBA that I partly made actually because I mostly follow the courses of intrapreneurials. And then after that, the pandemic, the COVID pandemic reached France, and I also had the birth of my baby son. So I decided to interrupt the MBA, not to go to finalize it, just to take care of my son in these particular times, and also because I was working to a personage project which is called Terrians. Maybe we'll have a couple of words about it, and which is a company that helps people to become a clear actor in the ecological transitions that we all have to make if you want to envision a brighter future, I would say. So.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to talk about it because I think I'm not the only one in the room to be interested, and we had a lot of talks about that. So that's very interesting to see how we can do this space to Earth trip actually. And so you touched on that, Mathieu, and before congrats for your newborn. That's a good news. So a little colonial as they call them this year. And so you said you spent 15 years in the space industry. Can you give us a bit of overview of how the industry has evolved? I don't think it's clear for a lot of people what people working in the space industry are doing. What does it mean to explore space? And maybe a little bit of how does it evolve, but maybe help us understand why we're putting so much brain power and so much resource in trying to understand what's happening in the big universe out there, and instead of trying to finish to discover planet Earth.
Yeah, of course. First, space industry is really has really evolved a lot during these past 2 decades. It has entered from a previous world where it was really an institutional world where companies like ours were just answering to institutional agencies such as the NASA that everybody knows, and the European Space Agency, CNES, and so on. And it moved slightly toward a more entrepreneurial world with more private funds because people, some company proves that it was now possible to make money in space. So that opens the door to a lot of investors and a lot of new projects. And all that is also based on a technological revolution, which is, we call it like that, which is about the small sat revolutions, which is the fact that now you can just put some hardware within a 10 to 10 centimeters a cube sat and send it to space, and you can already have a mission that you can monetize. So it opens a lot of opportunities to a lot of people because the capital expense that you have to put to reach space is far lower than before. This is also helped by another trend, which is the fact that the access to space is the cost reach space is far reduced, namely thanks to actors like SpaceX from Elon Musk, who change the way we launch things in space, who prove that it was sustainable and technically feasible to have reusable launchers. So it changed a lot of things. And maybe one of the more striking points to illustrate that is that when I started my career in Thales Space, actually, we had the opportunity, we won a huge contract at that time to provide a constellation of 82 spacecraft, 82 satellites, which was Iridium Next constellations. And now we are talking about mega constellation projects with starting from SpaceX, which is a project of 48,000 spacecraft. 48,000 spacecraft. So we are completely changing the world of space. It's really a new thing behind. So it's both exciting and frightening, I would say. So the fact which is really exciting in the current trend is that well, space is getting more and more democratized. So a lot of people and a lot of countries are doing things in space. And even in the institutional programs, there is a lot of things very exciting. So I think the more exciting one is that we will go back to the moon. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's planned that we will go back to the moon by this decade. And that this time, the plan is to go back, but to stay, actually. It's not just to send a crew and getting back safely. It's to send a crew and to think about how we could just settle down with a moon base and try to along the time, develop things in order to stay. So it opens a wide range of new opportunities that we call the moon economy, the lunar economy. And I think it will change a lot of things. So, and what is striking too is that the United States are not alone this time, is that we have this program of Lunar Orbital Platform Gateway that will be the successor of the International Space Station. So let's imagine the International Space Station is orbiting the Earth at something like 350 kilometers. Now this time, Thomas Pesquet will have to move all the way toward the moon to orbit around the moon. So it changed a lot of things, and it changed a lot of things in the way we consider space exploration and the way the people here on Earth perceive this adventure, let's say. What else in terms of exciting things? Maybe you cannot miss the start of space tourism this summer with Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, and SpaceX. That raised a lot of questions. And also, well, I mean, that's the more significant things. Yeah. So all these open new challenges for space too. Which is the first one, the most obvious one is the challenges of the orbital debris. So, well, I'm part of the one that think that the next environmental concern will be around Earth, because we have so many debris, so many spacecraft, that the collision risk is highly rising. And that as soon as some collisions appear, so I don't know if you have seen the movie Gravity, but then it's probably you enter into a zone that you don't manage at all. So it's quite dangerous. So it opens a lot to new subjects such as active debris removal, which is one of the priority of the European Space Agency.
But when you're talking about the risk of collision, you're talking about like who might collide into who? Is that like a satellite together? Is that the spacecraft trying to go to space and finding
mostly satellites together? So we have to realize that a spacecraft, a satellite, which is orbiting Earth in low Earth orbit, is is rushing at a pace at something like 28,000 kilometers per hour. 28,000 kilometers per hour. It's huge. It's 7 or 8 times, I think, the speed of a bullet when you fire a gun here. So I just let you consider the energy of that things. So when you have two satellites crossing and that you have a collision risk, you don't want to play. So every time you need to try to set up a collision avoidance maneuver in order not to crash. But when it happens, you get a lot of debris that raised the risk of secondary collisions, and then you enter into a kind of loop that puts you into, that raise your risk. So it's very serious, and I think it's a challenge that should be really tackled seriously by our industry today. The other risk and the new challenge for space industry is also related to the reputation risk, because we had a word about that, but it was somehow puzzling to have these new space tourists raising in a world when we say that this summer we had a lot of fire all around the world, in Canada, in Siberia, in places that normally there is no fire at summertime. So I think people will have difficulties to understand that on one hand, we ask people to make a lot of sacrifice and a lot of effort to drive or impact down, let's say. And that on the other end, we have some billionaires that are willing to pay several billions, or I don't even know the price, to pay a 10 minutes orbit leap. So that's I think a point that should be a point of attention for us, for the industry, I would say.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like a spoiled child dream, right? Like, I want to go to space.
Yeah. Yeah,
but,
exactly.
I get that. So this one we can come back afterwards, and I get the point of sending satellite and creating a new kind of businesses. But we come back to the idea of going back to the moon and setting up a base there, and you say like that opens up a lot of new opportunities for linear economy. Like, what exactly that means? Like, why do we care about like setting foot on the moon for a long period of time, given that, from what I understand, it's not really a friendly place. You can't really, like, it's even worse than the lockdown we just came out from, right? So why would we put ourselves in a self-imposed lockdown on the moon, even though there's no pandemic? Like, you're stuck at home, right?
Yeah. So it's definitely not a pleasant place to be. Clearly, it's not friendly at all. So on the moon, either you are looking to the sun and you are burning at 150 degrees, either you are looking back and you try to hide in the shadow of the moon, and then you are freezing at 150 degrees. So it's just a nightmare. No, but moon, let's say, is the ideal playground if you want to learn to go further. And then well, I think the space agencies that were really focused on Mars, because Mars is let's say maybe a more friendly planet for human beings, and to try to have a new perspective for human spaceflight. Well, it's the current Graal, let's say, to go to Mars, but it's far away. Just to give some figures, to go to Mars, you have to spend 6 months for your trip just to go to Mars, and then you have 6 months back. But due to the conjunction and the way that the planet orbits around the sun, you have to stay there something like 4 or 5 months more. So it's a long trip, very difficult and very hazardous. While the moon is 3 days away from us, so it's a good playground to learn. The other thing is that the moon. Sorry, is also a good place to start working on new topics like the in situ resources utilizations. So it's a way to learn to use the resources that we can find on the ground, whether on the moon or Mars or on asteroids or whatever, thanks to new robotic device and new way to create value from the material that you can find on the way. And this is a real game changer in the way we can then design the space exploration program, and it's let's say the key to go further. Yeah, really.
That all makes sense when you connect one dot to the other, like we go to the moon so that we can go to Mars and all that. But that doesn't really answer the initial question, which is, why the hell would you do that in the first place? What's the big deal about that? What's the, what's the big play out there? Like, there must be something more than that, because like so far it makes us feel like the pandemic was actually planned so that people could train to go to the moon, so they can plan to go to Mars, and like it's getting worse and worse. But then what's the big reason for that? Like we could learn to live with the resources on the ground on planet Earth, which we're not exactly doing well at the moment. Without actually spending millions and having a huge carbon impact going to the moon in the first place, right? So what, and again, like as you said, it's such a hostile place that no one wants to live there anyway. So what's the big reason behind that? What are we actually looking for when we're exploring space?
Well, I think it's a question that is far beyond, let's say, also the plan that we are setting. Is that at the end of the day, it's about our common adventure as mankind, and the people who want to go always do the next step to go further to explore. To be honest, I think there is a lot of things we can do without putting humans in space. There is a lot of things, and my initial knowledge is about robotics. Is not it's not a complete. Well, I think it has a place with that. We can do a lot of things without humans, but people want to prove themselves that they can go further, that they can. Learn a lot, and I think it's something which is very grounded in what we are. It's probably also part of our DNA. This willing to explore and this willing to go further. So so that's for the initial things. That then we have some other reasons that might be. More related to the competitions that some, let's say, countries or states are having around that. So it's noticeable to consider that, well, the Apollo program was part of a time where the USA was racing against the USSR at this time. And then now the moon programs are raising again in a context where the China is showing a lot of capacities, and that push pressure, leadership pressure, also on the US that want to show that they are still in the race. So there is a lot of things that can explain the fact that we have to move on. So, well. I don't know if it has your point, Julien.
Okay. I was hoping there would be like something a bit more about our survival, or something more like the scientific research.
No, I think, well,
it really sounds like a bit in context from Western.
To answer you about our survival, it's an interesting point because it's a point of debate in space industry between the peoples, maybe like Elon Musk or this kind of guys, who think that to be able to survive as spacey, we have to be multiplanetary, because if you have some basement in different planets, then you get diversified, and so if you diversify, you reduce your risk. So it's an asset management logic, but frankly speaking, it's far from what we are, and it's very far from the emergency of the topics we have to tackle here on Earth. So to me, this option is probably a long-term option, but it cannot be today's answer. And for our survival as species, space is also helping, but differently. I mean, it's not by sending people in space that we are helping. It's by sending spacecraft that are sensing the Earth at a scale that nothing else can do. And that is the only and perfect way and tool to understand the dynamic of the Earth system as a whole. And that also that today is one of the things that also help people to understand what is the current situation. I think all the things that we hear about the climate change, about this kind of dynamic, will be very, very harder to have a real clear view without space assets today. So this is how space helps for our survival.
So that's really interesting. Then sorry, I'm very biased on that, but then it starts to make sense on why we would do that now. And so what do we learn, and that kind of like connect to the title of this session, right? But how do we discover Earth from the space? What are the things that we learn when we take not even a helicopter view, but a satellite view on Earth, and what does it enable us to see that we cannot see from down here?
Yeah. Sorry, Julien, I have to check something because I see my battery is getting low, and I think I have to plug me differently. So, and I get back to your point just now.
No problem.
Sorry.
That's the issue with those satellites.
All right.
The battery is very, very low. I told you.
Sorry, so just could you
no worries. Yeah, the question was and putting the thread that you just started, when we look at Earth from the space, what do we actually learn from there, and what does it enable us to learn about Earth, and that connects to the title of this session. How do we rediscover Earth when we look at it from the space?
Yeah, I think there is several things. The first thing is that, if you want to take to solve a problem, the best thing you have to take is to take 2 or 3 steps back, just to have the complete vision of your problem. And going to space is the only way we have to take these step backs from Earth, and to have it as a complete picture too. And what is striking is that that's changed a lot the vision that the first astronauts had when they went to space. If you listen to most of the astronauts that participate to Apollo program, they are all they all have the same speech about the fact that we share a common destiny. Let's say I mean, from above you don't see the border. You can recognize a lot of things that you learn, but you don't see any borders, that separate the countries. So it's really fosters this sense of unity in space. One of the that's ranked among the pictures that changed the world is a picture that is called Earthrise, that has been taken by the Apollo 8 crew, which was the first crew that turned around the moon. And when they raised from the other side of the moon, they see the Earth raising over the moon, the lunar horizons. And that changed a lot of things. And they have the things that say, okay, everything I know, everything I love, all my concern, all my problems, all my history, everything, if I just put myself this way, everything is hidden behind. So it puts you back in your place, So space and space exploration is an ideal way, let's say, to to convince each and every one of us that we are sharing actually the same destiny, and so that we should act in more unity. So that's one part of the reason. One part of the answer for your question is about the conscience. Then it's about the knowledge also. Well, while exploring the solar system, we realize, to give you an example, that on Mars, 3.5 billion years from now, there was oceans and rivers flowing down on Mars. And to that, to be able to sustain that, it means that Mars had a thicker atmosphere that it has today. And that, well, if we look at Mars today, you realize that all that disappeared actually. So what we can learn from that? We can learn that planets, as well, you know, the planets for the ancient Greeks was kind of gods, so it was kind of things that never move, never change. But actually what we learn is that planets are fragile system in a fragile equilibrium, and that it happens, I would say, unfortunately, it happens that they die. And when you know that, on the other hand, looking to Venus, which is our real planet system, sister, you know that Venus has an atmosphere that, well, has a temperature too far 450 degrees of ground. The atmosphere is just crawling over its greenhouse effect. You cannot consider, well, it makes you consider differently what we are currently playing with on Earth. When you heard about the greenhouse effect and the CO2 emissions, things that are not conceivable, you can find direct example just looking on the other planets, and I'm just talking of the two which has the closest to Earth. So it changed a lot of things on the way you position yourself. So that's I think that's
interesting. That gives much more meaning, I feel like, to the exploration than the idea of rich millionaires willing to see the Earth from the skies. And I believe that's kind of the reason as well that led you to found the Terrians that you were mentioning at the beginning. Can you tell us in a nutshell what it is and what's the main objective of this initiative you're launching?
Yeah, of course. Terrians, let's say, is well, it's a really young company. So we found it just earlier this year in March 2021, and the idea was really to put this list from space, which are the unity that factually we are. The fact that we should be amazed by Earth, the fact that we should consider our common destiny with more responsibility. And we put all that together in a project which is fully dedicated to the ecological transitions, which is called Terrians, because Terrians, you know, is a twist, an orthographical twist from the word terrien, which is the French from Earthling, which is the inhabitant of Earth, and which is something that is wider encompassing than just humans, because sometimes when we talk about the ecological transition, so we consider it's the end of humanity and so on. That's not really the point. The point is that we need to understand that we are sharing a common destiny, even with the plants, and even with the animals, even with well, any ecosystem here on Earth. So practically, what is Terrians? Terrians is a mission-oriented social network, which is a kind of platform where people can meet, talk about the ecological transitions, try to understand what is at stake and how they can answer to that, because it's very complex problems. We notice that there is a lot of confusions for people between the different pollutions. For instance, people are mixing the risk of climate warning with the risk of biodiversity collapse and the risk of pollution, air pollution or ground pollution or whatever, the risk for human health. So the idea is to help people to gather, to understand it together, and most importantly, to act. What we want to do is to reduce the distance between the intentions that are already there for most of the people and the actual actions that the people are about, are at least willing and able to do, because what we believe is that there is a lot of things that are in our hands as a consumer, as a citizens, and so on. So that's the objective of the platform that is not already online. We are on the last weeks of preparation before going out, but yeah. So that's it. So we have this aspect that is for the people, and we have also another part which is more let's say targeting companies that want to tackle the ecological transitions seriously. I mean, so without just having some filling the case, the boxes of a form and this kind of stuff.
Cool. How can people get updated when that launch is? Can they enter an email on the website or not yet?
Yes. So far we are not in line, but we have a kind of landing page. It's not exactly a landing page because the landing page is supposed to explain what we intend to do, and we choose not to do so far. We are working on that. So it's quite a mysterious page, but yet you can. It's more for the people that I met, and I can explain what it is. But you can pre-register on that if you want to be aware when we will be online. So and you can find on the website on our URL, which is www.terreans.com. So it's both for the companies. Sorry?
We'll put it on the chat of Swapcard so that people can copy it.
Okay, thank you. No, we're not still online, but this is a way you can, if you want to be aware of that. But then you can also get in touch with me directly on LinkedIn. It's maybe the more efficient way today to have also a talk on what exactly we intend to do or we intend to proceed. So there is a lot of way. It's the very beginning of our story, so we are willing to discuss with potential companies that will be interested to work this way, and also with people that I think that could help anyway. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Mathieu. And is that just in one word? Is that going to be your full-time job, or you're still with Thales on the other side?
So it's now my full-time job. So since 2 weeks now, I've moved to Terreans' full-time job. So I laid for several time, at least for the next month, my positions in Thales. No, now it's time that we move on with Terreans and that we launch it.
Excellent. So welcome to the wonderful world
more clearly.
So welcome to the wonderful world of entrepreneurs, and there's a big community ready to help you already out there, and there's the few that were commenting on the thing. So, Matthew, thanks. We're running out of time, and I have Leah and Rachel connecting from the US, and they're going to kill me because they woke up expressly for this talk, and now we're delaying. In really one word, you talked already about what you think are the major challenges for the society and the planet. We understood what were the impact on your business and your job, because you just quit your job to launch a business linked to that, and I think that's an awesome message to take the leap of faith and to run after what you truly believe in, and probably take some risks, but for what you think is really worth it. For future generation, what would be your one piece of advice to tackle those challenges?
Well, on these particular challenges, which is how to tackle the climate change and biodiversity collapse and the ecological transitions, I think, well, the future generations, at least for the ones that are already there, they are fully aware of the problem. They are more, let's say, conscious on what they should do, or also to what they should not do. So, I mean, I don't have any advice to give them. I think it's not about, about climate. It's not about giving advice to the next generation. The point is just for us to consider that it is our challenge right now, and for each and every one of us. So this is the real point. The next generation, they will follow. They won't have the choice because it won't be a challenge or future challenge. It will be their problem. And to me, it makes me mad not to do anything for them, because as we said just at the beginning of this interview, I had some it makes things very tangible. I mean, so no advice to the future generation. I think if we are not presently in positions to do something by ourselves, we have no advice to give to anyone. So that's as simple as that. Well, what I can do and say to people right now, if I can say that, is that I really believe that it's in our hands, and I mean in our hands. In our hands, it's not in the hands of our leaders. It's not on the end of the ones who are holding the capital, the ones who are holding the power, the one. Well, they have everything to lose in changes. This kind of guy. So it's really about the people from the street, from everyone of us, that it's something that we have to tackle together and by ourselves. I mean, really. And it's really something that is one of the basics of Terrians also, is that we want to prove that this is not just words, but it can also be a reality. And I mean, at the very end of all that, what we don't have to forget is what we left to the people that will come afterward. And no one will ask you at the very end if your career for this company or these famous employees was successful, or if you were happy with that. But the question, what did you do when, as you knew that there was a systemic problem? Did you do your share, actually? I think it's it's the question that we have to have in mind, and that should maybe invite us to rethink about our priorities and values. Well, it's my opinion. My opinion.
That's a good one, and actually, even though you don't have an advice, you're leading by example, and we had a few today, so it's not an isolated example, and that's kind of encouraging as well. Where we had Jan moderating the panel just before, who did the exact same thing. We had Ben this morning moderating the sustainability session. We had Maxime launching a company in there, Jim as well. So we have a bunch of our alumni that are actually following their conviction very much like you do, and so I think that's very very positive. Thank you so much, Mathieu. I could go on for today, but we can't, unfortunately. And I'm going to welcome our next guest. And again, thank you very very much for joining. All the success in the world to Terriens. If we can do anything to help you, I know I'll be ready to do that, and very happy to contribute in any way I can. And since it's recorded, I don't have a choice now. It's a real commitment and a public one. So do ask. I'd be happy to do that. So best of luck, and take care of you and your baby. And I hope we can meet in person very soon.
Thank you, Julien. My pleasure. So see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And we are welcoming next Leah and Rachel. Rachel did. Is Rachel here? Rachel? Oh no, Rachel was there, but then she looks like she's gone. Leah, Rachel just abandoned you, it seems. Where are you, Rachel? Let me ask her. Can you hear us, Leah? Oh yeah, she's coming back. Okay, cool.
I can hear you.
Joining.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, very well. And so sorry for the delay. That's the alia of being the last one. Hey Rachel, you made us scared there. We're there the whole time, and then just when we connect you, you leave the room.
Yes.
You can't do that for the last station of the day. You want to stop now.
I'm here.
Thank you both for joining. And again, sorry to be late. We made you wake up early, and then we make you wait in a waiting room. That's not really cool of us. But yeah, delays happen one after the other. So here we are. Very very happy to have you to finish our global week. You're the last one, so a bit of pressure to deliver the bar as high as we promised everyone, and we put you there because we knew people would stay for that. But I will say in Brazil where I live for a while, that means we're going to close the global week with a golden key. So two women, both in the US, on the north and the south of the West Coast. Seattle for Leah, and Rachel for in San Francisco. Although Leah, I think you're joining from Denver today. Is that correct? That's what you were saying. So we even disrupt your weekend.
No, I was supposed to, but I canceled the weekend actually last minute. So I'm in Seattle right now.
Tell us that wasn't because of us, please.
No.
And so if I'm correct, still Leah is promo 2011 and Rachel 2013. Is that correct, or did I switch the?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So heads up for our audience. Those two are working on super strategic topics for the companies that have a bit of a PR concern. So we'll try and get some juicy details, but it might be that they can't answer some of our questions. So we'll really respect that because we don't want to put them in a tight spot. Of course, they're speaking in their own names and not necessarily in the name of their own company. But we want to explore the experience much more than what their company is doing. So, well, the title of this panel might sound a bit like a teaser. I'm actually putting the bar high enough for what you guys are doing. You're working for Airbus and Amazon, two companies reputed for pushing the limits of what's possible, and so that's what we're trying to do with the Global Week Season 2 as well. So impossible is not a fact; it's an opinion, and you're kind of here to prove that. And we've been trying to do that for 2 days now. So can we start with that? And can you start by giving us the big challenges that you're working on at the moment, and so that we can start with a bang. So maybe Leah, you want to start on that?
Yes, sure. So I work in the transportation team at Amazon, but in the sustainability team of that transportation team. And just for some background, so Amazon co-founded the Climate Pledge in 2019. It's a global commitment to reach net zero carbon by 2040. And it also has a sub-goal by 2030 to have 50% of all shipment that would be net zero, and that involves both the facilities and the transportation. And so my team is the middle mile team, and we basically we manage both the inbound warehouse transfer and outbound to the delivery station before the final stage of delivery to the end customer. And so to finish, my team is focused on helping the business team decarbonize that organization. And my role specifically is to help our partners also decarbonize their own operation. And so that includes carriers, but also other transportation partners that we work with. And so because we are in the middle mile, it's a bit more challenging than, I would say, the last mile, which can, for example, already has the technology, like, for example, electric delivery vans. In the middle mile, we are using planes, trucks, and ocean. And so those are sectors that are a little bit more complex because the technology doesn't necessarily is there at the moment.
Cool. Thanks. So a small challenge, as we said that it was going to be a bunch of trucks, planes, and ships that you're trying to make zero carbon with the help of your team. Cool. Rachel, what about you? What are you currently working on? I think you're on mute. We can't hear you. No? No, can't hear you. Nope, still not. All right.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that worked now. Cool.
So it's AirPod problem. So I worked at Avec, which is the innovation center in Silicon Valley of Airbus. Initially, we founded the company in 2015. Paul Eremenko founded this company to create new concepts in the aerospace industry, completely disrupting the industry. Today, we still have this approach, but we also want to innovate on what's existing and really prepare the future of the mobility. Did you speak in English or in French? I just don't remember now.
I speak in English. Yeah, the session is in English. The whole afternoon is in English, so you can keep going. All right.
I'm guessing it's the same for you both, switching in both.
Lost in translation. And so you're saying you're innovating and you're trying to disrupt your own industry, but so in my experience, when you're innovating, you're trying to solve challenges. So what you see are the big challenges that the industry needs to solve, or what is innovation in the first place? What are you trying to fix?
I think it's a bit of both. We work on different approach, different projects, different innovation concepts. So we're not limiting ourselves to just one approach. What we want is first to fix some of the problems that we see today in terms of the way we build aircraft, the way we design them, about the data analytics that I'm not able to go into the detail, but you can guess what it is. But also really prepare the new aircraft, right? What do they look like? How they're going to operate? Which framework and which environments they're going to operate in? So we really have this dual perspective where let's do better now and then prepare the future to do even better in the next years. So I'm the director.
Long-term goals, right?
Sorry, go ahead.
So kind of like quick wins and long-term goals, a dual approach to try and get an immediate short-term impact and then a long-term one. Cool.
So for Airbus, the idea to be here in Silicon Valley is really leveraging the skills that are here, and because of the industry, right, the tech companies, they have specific skills, and we are in a specific environment that is not necessarily as accessible from other countries where we are implanted. But here we do have a panel, or I would say a range of skills that help what we are trying to do.
Okay, and so you two seems to have some of the most exciting jobs in the world. So one is working on making the logistic industry carbon free. The other one is reinventing the future of possibly the aviation and mobility even at large, as you said. So I'm guessing the companies you work for didn't pick you randomly. So what happened since you left school? And by the way, that wasn't so long ago if we compare to some other of the people that we had that were much more senior than you. So how do you pull up you pulled off such a job, and what happened since you left TBS and put you on that track? What did you have to do to get there? I'm sure like a lot of our audience are interested. Maybe Rachel, you want to start, and
could my answer be luck? So there is always a bit of luck, right, in everyone's journey. So I was part of Airbus on my gap year when I was a student at Toulouse Business School. So I knew already the company, and I knew the business model. I was especially working on manufacturing side and engineering side at the time. So when I came to the US, I started working with a tech company, like a really tech company on a SaaS model. And then I learned about what Airbus was trying to do here. So I joined their team. I almost, at the very beginning, we were like 2017. So just few people just trying to figure out how we're going to do that, how we're going to bring value, and like really building the whole entity, right? Nothing was there. So it was an exciting moment. Also, it was a really challenging period, right? You really build something from scratch. So I say luck. I also say that I had a strong background in finance, which helps. And also I knew the company, so it did help to create an interface between Europe, headquartered in DC, and Silicon Valley.
Cool. What about you, Leah? What brought you to Seattle and to Amazon like that to work on that team specifically?
Yes, so on my end, so I started working at Amazon in 2014 in France, in the Paris office, who was just launching the Amazon advertising team at the time. So I came with a marketing business to consumer background, but I directly joined then the advertising team. And I worked in the advertising team for 3.5 years, did different things, account management, sales management. And then after 3.5 years, I really wanted to expand my skills and move to the US. And then in terms of where to go in the US with Amazon, it was either like Seattle or New York at the time, but Seattle had more opportunity. And I actually visited Seattle for a week with work, and I really loved the city, the surrounding areas, and just the culture of the city. And I thought it would be a really nice change of sceneries. And so I found a job at Alexa, where I worked for 3.5 years, something like that as well. And I stayed in marketing there. Last job I had, I was doing driving engagement marketing for Alexa in Canada. And it was a really enriching experience, but as I think many speakers told their story, like we all like I love learning. I love jumping into new challenge, and I really thought I was at a point in my career where I really needed to make that pivot if I really wanted to do something that I was passionate about, and it was a good moment. So I kind of put some steps. I started things that would then help me to get this job, and so I moved to I transitioned to this new role within Amazon in the transportation team 7 months ago. So it's still pretty new. And so I think what really helped me get there was the fact that I stayed with Amazon and that I have now that experience where I'm able to adapt. And even though I don't come from that industry, the transportation industry, nor the sustainability with a deep sustainability background, I think the fact that I had that Amazon experience and that I'm able to learn on the job and then train myself was enough for me to get the chance to get the role. So I'm grateful for that opportunity to work in a company that actually not only hire experts and people who've done that for years, but also hire people who don't necessarily have the experience, but help them ramp up.
Cool. So you're right. A lot of our speakers actually talked about the continuous learning, and there was a Jeremy yesterday from Google saying the same thing, or he learned like the tech stack, and some others talking about. I think that was great. Another Rachel that we had that talked about reinventing yourself and all that. So from what you say, there's luck that Rachel has talked about that we can really plan. Working in the company first in France and then moving with them, and so that's something that I've seen, and I've done that myself when I moved from Google. I moved from Europe to Latin America, and it was a much easier move. So so putting some stuff in place, so planning a bit ahead, as you said, Leah, and kind of like imagining what your next move is going to be. So that means a little bit of patience as well, and resilience in getting there. Are there any other tips that you guys would add for anyone who wants to maybe not become Leah or Rachel, but have like a similar path, follow your footsteps, and think like, all right, I'd like to do my dream job, and what could be a good help to get there, especially maybe for the new generation, but not necessarily.
I can start if from my perspective and my experience, I think staying open-minded on what is your expectation of a dream job and what is your abilities and where to get there. Being open-minded at receiving the feedback from your team, your colleagues, your family, whatever, your friends, and really redefining along the way what it is actually your dream job, right? Because I guess when I left school, I had this idea, and now my idea is completely different because it was built with my experience and also the feedback of what I was able to do, right? And maybe I took an easy path. I don't know. I didn't feel like it's the last few years, but it is something that you redefine every day, and I think we need to keep an open mind.
I like that, and I like to joke sometimes that I don't know what I want to do when I'm a grow up. But it's kind of like what you're saying is like kind of like dream of your next job instead of thinking of what you want to be in 40 years from now, because you probably don't know, and maybe that job doesn't even exist yet. And so by doing stuff that you like, maybe you'll get to the next one afterwards and all that. So and redefine on the way. And another one maybe on top of that, and I feel that's a bit of what Leah was saying as well, but talk about it and talk about it only, because if you don't talk about it, no one will know, and so the opportunities won't come if you don't communicate on what you actually want, your expectation, all that. Leah, there's anything you want to add to that? Any stuff that helps you get what you wanted, maybe?
I was just gonna say, like, also have some empathy with yourself. Like, it's fine if things don't build necessarily the way you imagine them, and that shouldn't stop you from keep on pushing. But also, like, there are times when you need to push. There are times for different steps, and so I think keeping that empathy with yourself and no. Is important. We live in a world that goes so fast, where expectations are coming from everywhere. So setting the right expectation with yourself as well, and where you are and what makes you happy in specific moments of your life is also important to help you reach those goals that you have, the deeper one.
Cool. I like that. So now let's get back a little bit to your current missions, and so. One way that we have to get you to talk about it without actually talking about any of the confidential stuff is to ask you how you do it instead of doing what's the output. And so when you get a challenge as big as you guys have, like decarbonize the logistic industry or like part of it and reinvent the mobility. How do you approach it? What's kind of your playbook? How do you solve such like huge problem where if you just think about the challenge, it's already give you a headache, right? You're like, oh. So what's the step-by-step kind of?
I can start. So from our perspective, ideas already exist out there. There is a bunch of people, a bunch of talented people who are already thinking about next step solutions. And we create, I want to say, a connectivity between the teams that are ready to work on those ideas, the leaders that can make it into action, and the company that is mainly going to profit it in one sense, which is our main investor, but also the industry, right, which is going to be transformed. So it's really, I think the idea already on here in the air, I want to say, is just about making sure it happens. And so building the tools and building the teams to make this happen, this is how we actually do it.
What about you, Leah? What's your way to go at it?
Yeah, so obviously there is no playbook that it currently really exists, but I think when I started, for example, the first step is obviously to get a sort of a lay of the land and start with the partner or the customers that, for example, I'm interested in the carrier space. And so how can I better understand what are their needs, what are their blockers, and then from that, then you can imagine solution that can further help them. And then outside of just making that sort of analysis in the beginning, setting the right mechanism that will then help you build your roadmap, and that includes measurement, having the right metrics that you can track against, because if you don't have the metric, you cannot really know what you're supposed to improve, what you're supposed to, where you're supposed to go. So having the right mechanism, which include like the goal as well that you want to reach as a business. And so in the when you think about decarbonization, there are like short-term goals, but there are also long-term milestones that we may want to reach. So having those established tracking mechanism towards the end goal is really what helps a business or an organization move forward together. It's a challenge that requires not only my team, but basically the whole business to consider. And so I think a key piece is having those right mechanism. And then the last piece that I was thinking is also, for example, like I said, I'm still new to this role, so I'm not an expert. I would not consider myself an expert, but so who are the right experts in the company that I can talk to and that can help me gain expertise, but also do my job better and provide me different point of view and feedback. And so that's that, but also participating into conferences and just, general like learnings and staying on track with what's happening, because partnership, coalition are going to be key as well to figure it out as we go.
And so continuing on that, and because we took a bit of a swing at Uncle Jeff in the previous conference, talking about how he goes to the space, and now we see that Amazon is also investing hugely in sustainability projects. So for both of you, you're in companies that are very very comfortable positioned on the market, not to say even dominant. For reasons, because you've done an amazing job at what you do as well. But so being in such a comfortable position, why would companies invest in such projects? What is the need of doing that, right? Like, so Airbus is I think Arnaud was talking about that before. It's a duopoly, so very likely that one is going to take over the market. Amazon has just proven that it's more efficient than any other company on earth. So you don't really need to do that. So what's the motivation behind that? Why do you invest heavily in sustainability? Why do you invest heavily in innovating and reinventing the industry? Leah, maybe you want to continue because you're already on there.
Yes, so I think like you mentioned, when you get as big as what Amazon is, you have some responsibilities, and also, so not to sound too corporate, but so there are some at Amazon, there are like what they call leadership principles, which are principles that kind of guide the company, like how people are hired, promoted, etc. And they just added actually one new leadership principle that is kind of answering that question. And I just noted down because I knew you were going to ask the question, is success and scale bring broad responsibility. So basically, we know that the customers are like the customers mostly need change. They are demanding change now. And so starting from the customer, a company, we need to rethink the way companies operate today. And so I think that's the main reason why the company is starting to address those changes. A company that that fails to tackle those changes in the future won't be successful. And so it's important to tackle them now. And so I think Amazon wants to, because of its size, also knows that it has a huge power to influence the market and influence the industries. And so I think they want to be a part of that and try to drive positive change. And that's why they launched they signed the climate change, and they want more companies to join them and then work together to decarbonize faster.
So with great power come great responsibilities, and so we kind of have to tackle that because we're in the position to do it. That's good. You, Rachel, how do you justify that Airbus would spend a large amount of money where they are already dominating the industry, or sort of?
That's actually a great question, and I see some question on the message as well. And that's a question probably internally we are asked and we ask ourselves. So from my perspective, I see few values to invest into innovation for a company like Airbus. Today we're making planes and we're flying people. We know that the future of flights is completely different. It's electric. It's autonomous. We need to jump on this train as a company to, I want to say, to surf in the new wave, right? And to be part of the new world. If we don't, and if other companies are building those innovative flights and those innovative aircraft, and we don't, then as a company, we don't take the responsibility of sustainability in terms of business, right? Also, because obviously Airbus is committed to create better aircraft and to have a better environment, a green impact, a better greener impact on how we build and how we serve planes. So there are some initiatives internally. And we know Airbus has announced a zero-emission plane by 2035, right? So all those initiatives, like having an innovation center, focusing on some approach, some innovations, it's part of a global game of the company to be a better contributor in the industry, but also in the society, as making better aircraft, but also provide tools to make flights possible, to actually transport people from A to Z, which is our main business. That's it.
There's a follow-up question that was directed to Airbus first, but I think it's applicable as well at Amazon. In companies as big as that, that's Pierre asking that. How do you ensure that how do you actually fight against what you call the NIH, so not invented here syndrome? And so basically, how do you get people to keep an open mind? And so I'm guessing that's related as well to, on one side, resistance to change and the capacity to embrace the evolution of the industry, but on the other side as well, not be like in a completely closed ecosystem where you accept like inputs from the outside and inside, and you try and make the best of existing ideas and new ones. So how do you actually ensure that the best ideas come to the top and come to and execute on them and bring results?
So I want to say there is two approaches in innovation from Airbus that I see clearly, and there are probably others, and you probably have met some actors as well from your network. One is to innovate from ideas that are found internally, right? So we do ask our people, we do ask our teams to come forward, to talk about ideas, to talk about new processes, to talk about really new concepts, the thinking, so we can even assess and invest in those new concepts and ideas. So internally, we do have tools and processes that allow people to completely go above and beyond their role. Like if you're HR manager, doesn't mean that you can't think about an innovation on whatever operation, right, you're sensitive to. So we have this internally process. Then we actually are seeking people that have already constructed ideas that are not necessarily Airbus employees, not necessarily Airbus partners, right? That are people out from their PhD thinking about a way to automate this process. And usually, if it has to do with operation on building a plane or building a new aircraft, those people with ideas, they are like highly talented engineers that know about how actually you make a plane, right? So we are seeking those people. We want to be in touch with those, not necessarily coming from our employee pools. So the not invented here syndrome, I actually know this term because that's something we actually talk about internally. We want to keep an open mind, and we are trying to do so. I'm not saying that there is no challenge. It's a global company with 100 entities and thousands of teams. And obviously it's something that is true in any other global corporation, obviously, but there is a true, a true initiative to go against it. Because we want to survive and we want to thrive with innovation. So it's in our best interest to seek ideas also elsewhere.
And Leah, so Airbus is not really looking like Amazon. We think of Amazon as a very agile, super quick company and all that. But I think it's almost 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. So it's already a big corporation. It's not a startup anymore. But it's still not a traditional behemoth like Airbus can be. So how is it internally? You don't even know what resistant change is, or would exist as well, and you have to fight it, or it's somewhere in between? What does it look like to innovate at Amazon?
So internally we have a mechanism to innovate for any person who wants to, which is called writing a PR press release with an FAQ. So any employee can basically come up with an idea and write the press release of what that product or what that solution would look like, and then answers a couple of FAQs, and they can start presenting it to their leadership, and then that can be reviewed. And if that's an idea that has potential, then it can be funded, and that's how sometimes new teams get created. Specifically to my area, we have some internal incubator that focuses on innovating specifically on those topics. So we're asking basically the whole company to think big and then come up with ideas. And then externally, we are also launching sort of venture capital that invest in companies that are innovative. So for example, there is one that's specifically to sustainability that's called the Climate Pledge Fund. And so the idea is to find startups, companies that are have innovation and technologies where Amazon can help them grow, and those are technologies that we may want to scale with in the future. So they are kind of like both approach.
That's cool. I've used the PR framework before, and it works fantastically. So it's actually a great way to help yourself flesh out the idea and to collect feedback very, very quickly. It's a form of prototype that's super powerful. So that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. We're running out of time, so I want to make sure that we get at least one of the most exciting stuff, which is what are you both like the most excited about in your current jobs? And maybe I'll bundle that with another question, which is, what do you see being the trends, the upcoming trends in terms of logistic and transportation, and what will the future look like? And so kind of like on one side, what you're the most excited about, and then on the other side, what do you think the future is looking like, and is it linked or not necessarily? Yeah, maybe continue because you were already.
Yeah, it's so there are two things, right? Personally, I'm super excited to keep, like I said, I started this role not so long ago, so I think I have still so much to learn. And so I'm excited by the progress that we're making. I'm excited that other companies are joining. I'm excited that we are, I'm excited to start delivering on some of what my role entails and having an impact. So that's a bit maybe too tactical, I don't know, but that's a little bit what I'm excited about personally. I think more broadly, I'm excited that seems like the sustainability companies are tackling this issue more and more. So I think like there is an acceleration. We talk about it more and more, not enough yet, but overall, I think there is this acceleration that I think is encouraging. We need to go much faster, but there's this progress that I see. And when you look back 3 years from now, we were not where we are as a whole. So I think that's very encouraging. And then when in terms of the trends, again, not been in the industry for very long, so that's a big topic. But I think thinking about it in a way that is more end-to-end, like thinking about all those networks and transportation and how everything is interconnected, and how can everything be optimized much better than what it is today. And so maybe companies will also start to be a bit more transparent about their own network and sharing this information together to help, as a whole, improve and reduce their impact. And then I think the second piece that's coming is regulation, and I think we need those, maybe from EU or from the US, more regulation to further accelerate what needs to happen within companies to decarbonize much faster and make the right decision. When you think about like the finance department, like right now, for example, in most companies, like carbon is not priced. So if we get carbon priced in the future, like that would completely change how we operate and how we prioritize businesses. So there are like those big things that will probably happen in the next few years that will have a huge impact on how companies operate and how transportation works overall.
That's cool. And so to answer what you just said, like that's funny because obviously we have a bias in the organization of this Global Week, and we picked half of the speakers because they were working on a sustainability subject to begin with. So full disclosure, we actually picked them on purpose. But funnily enough, the other half that we didn't really pick, so that's just because they were genuinely interesting. They all talked about sustainability in whatever company they were and all that. So I think that's, for me, that was very encouraging, and we didn't push them towards that. There wasn't a script or anything, and I discovered a lot in that way. And the other point about transparency, we had a couple of talks on blockchain, and that goes very much in the direction of what you're saying. transparency and sharing information and making sure that everything is available. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of cool things in that way. What about you, Rachel? Most excited about and the trends in the mobility industry, the way you see it?
So I think a lot of things excite me in the way we innovate and what we do. I want to say that one thing really catch my attention is the urban air mobility and the accessibility of flight. For me, it's really something that I can foresee and I can imagine having those aircraft. And we're working on eVTOLs, but having those aircraft and all the tools to really provide accessibility to people and have a different kind of future, which is also part of it, which is also greener, right, in the way we move within the city. I think I want to say it's my main interest in being in the company. It's being part of this change in our cities.
And so that's a perfect platform for the end question. I wish we could stay all day, but you probably have better things to do with your Sunday. So just to kind of like wrap up this talk, could you share with us what you think is the one main challenge that you think is the one main challenge for our society and our planet? If you think about like 10 years from now, what would you pick?
I think the ability to think long term, we are definitely missing it, and so maybe politically or as most companies, as organization, we miss that ability to think beyond like the next 5-10 years, and so focusing a little bit more, like taking a step back and thinking more about where we want to go 50 years from now would be, and knowing that the path to get there will change and evolve, but having a bit of some vision, longer term vision would really help. And across like to tackle sustainability and multiple other issues that the society will face. Sorry, I'm forgetting.
No, you're totally right. Just an example that I like to put on that is Singapore is already raising their airports, knowing that in 100 years from now they're going to be flooded, and so that I wish like more of those thinking could happen, because we could do a lot more thinking like that. So I agree with you. What about you, Rachel? The one challenge you would pick as the most important for society and planet?
I think the willingness to change and not fearing the change. I think that's one of the main challenges I do see every day, but I do see in our world in general, is that the young generations, from my perspective, want to change things because they can see those challenges and they have a full white page in front of them and they want to build it. But the clash of generation, I think it's a true reality, and yeah, we shouldn't be afraid of change, but it's probably our human nature as well. So it's one of the main challenges.
Cool. How do you see those challenges impacting your job?
So think about, I can't give you specific, but think about the reason why a company would want to invest in a project, for example, that is going to disrupt completely what they're doing. And so internally, you could have some backlash and say, what do we even think about this? Like, what do we even spend money doing this? Because if that's true, or if that's a deliverable we're focusing on, then the whole thing is not sustainable, right? I mean, this kind of behavior when you don't necessarily want to initiate the change, or you don't even want to think about it because, like Leah was saying, you don't foresee like 100 years or long term, whatever the number of years, but and you see your focus, right? the focus of today and the next 5-10 years. And disruption, for me, disruption is change. And I see that people are still not willing to welcome the disruptors.
Julia? You're on mute earlier. Sorry.
So yes, I think those challenges impact my everyday work. I think there is a lot of influencing that needs to be done to be able to face those challenges. When you think, I was just thinking about the fact that those challenges impact my work, and then to face them, you have to do a lot of influencing also within your own company. Yeah, I don't know. I think I already kind of talked about it, unless there is a more specific question.
No, sure. And so just the closing words. So one tip that you would give to the next generation, the next cohort of TBS and the next generation coming up, and willing to position themselves for the biggest challenge of this planet and the world, and whatever is important for them. How would you advise them to position themselves to address those?
Keep dreaming.
Keep dreaming? Yeah,
keep dreaming.
I would say also, like, stay curious and be open to others, be inclusive of people that are different than you, because you can learn as so much, and sometimes we tend to stay in our circle. So make sure that would be an advice, to open yourself and be curious towards what you can learn, but also from others.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah. Thank you so much, Rachel, for waking up so early on a Sunday morning to join us and to inspire our community. It was great to have you, and I hope some people learn from you. So stay curious, keep dreaming. That's gonna be cool words. And what you just said, Leah, again, this event is for the TBS Foundation, and one of its goals is to bring diversity in the education system as well. And so that's one way to do it. So if you enjoy your education and you enjoy and you got a good job and a good career for that, and you see that there might be a lack of diversity in whatever environment you're working in, then there might be a way to change that and to contribute to getting more people from diverse backgrounds to follow suit and to bring those new impacts in the world. So thank you so much again. With that, we close the Global Week Season 2. That was an intense one, and we finished on very inspiring notes and how we are reinventing some of the most important industries. So very, very cool, and very happy to have you guys. And I hope we can meet in person at some point. Hopefully in the future where mobility happens again without any trouble. So thanks. Keep safe. Have a really wonderful Sunday, and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, and so with that ends the Global Week. Thank you all to you who attended the Global Week on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or either of those days. You still have time to make connections, look at who was connected and who you'd be interested to meet. Look at the TBS Foundation and see if you can help bring some diversity into the game. Remember Cassandra and Maxence, who joined us today to talk about the impact that the foundation had on their own career life and inspiration. And do use a network. We have a network of 45,000 alumni, thanks to the wonderful team that is taking care of it. Cathy, Raquel, sorry, mixing the Rachel now. So Raquel, Cathy, Mathilde, Penny, and all the what we call the bénévole actif, which is the same initials as a bienveillante attitude. And so all the benevolent souls that are helping us spread the word and animate and moderate this community throughout the world. There are more than than 50 all over the world volunteering to kind of like keep you connected and grow this community. They helped us a lot identifying the speakers. Some of them moderated some of the sessions. One of them joined the foundation as a fundraiser now, Marion. And so a big up to all of you. Again, a big thank you to all the team of TBS Education that helped us, the communication team who helped us spread the word, and the production team, to name them very specifically. Kylie, who did amazing work on this event. Florence, who was in the production and without which we wouldn't have a live streaming, a platform, or any of that, among other stuff. Thibaut, without whom we wouldn't have any marketing around the Global Week. And so thanks a million to all of you for making this happen and to making it possible. And with that, have you all a wonderful Sunday wherever you are in the world, and hope to see you soon. Do get in